Hey everyone. We're running a sale on subscriptions to Waypoint Plus so you can get 25% off an annual subscription through the end of the year with the coupon code WAYLASTMINUTE. If you're looking for a last-minute gift, give the gift of Waypoint. You can choose a date for your subscription to be delivered to the recipient so as not to ruin the surprise. Ooh. Or you can buy one for yourself. Visit vice.com/waypoint to order.
I miss you.
Happy holidays, Internet. It's December something, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 449. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and today I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
Welcome to 4459, the zoo, Rob. You, like, I was trying to contain my laughter because you were working up to something. Like, you stared off at your webcam, and I wasn't sure, like, I could see, like, an engine turning on. I just wasn't sure what was going to happen when the key got turned.
And you heard him in the background there, our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
He's
got on the boards!
That's it. I just have fucking air horn noise. I need an actual soundboard someday. I'm gonna figure that out.
I feel though, like every time podcast, once the seal is broken, on the soundboard, dark things are unleashed on the pod and its creative decisions and the audience.
God,
like
I think that one time we had that
power.
The one time we had that soundboard for what was it?
I reported the news.
Law reasons, and then we I reported the news specifically as a single clip. That was a good time, I think. I feel like we did it right. We chose specific clips.
Yeah. What was the law reasons one?
It was similar, but it was just like random. It was a small soundboard where, like, remember we were like answering questions and the timer up thing was just a random.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember what the clip was. I can't remember. It's like when
it was
when
multiple.
Goofy dies. There
was one of like Goofy die. Yeah, like, that's my Goofy.
So wait, is Goofy canonically dead in Kingdom Hearts?
No.
Okay. I mean, I am
back.
sure there is some fanfic building off that point, but no. But there is a moment where, like, if you were to watch the clip in isolation, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, he got
They killed Goofy.
They killed Goofy.
Like, those boulders hurt.
Yeah.
Goof.
Oh no, no, boulders aren't going to do shit to him. I've seen the skiing episode of.
But the great thing is that the rest of the characters act as if he's dead.
Oh yeah, well that's a crucial point.
It's everyone's like, it is shit. They got him. We're gonna go get revenge for our dead friend.
Yeah, it's not just the slapstick. I'm in a cartoon. Like, there is a reaction as though like the game has made the decision. Like, they got sign off from Disney to kill one of the most famous characters in their library.
Awesome.
Or you know who does die on, and they also undo it, but like also dies fucking on screen? Donald Duck eats it in Kingdom Hearts 3. You remember that?
I feel like he's had it coming.
Yeah. Well, he does it dramatically in like, he uses what is it?
Was it some kind of like
Zeta flare
disaster?
No, he just like is saving everyone's life. So he's like, he gets a heroic sacrifice moment. Yeah. He fucking uses Zeta flare and dies because that magic is so powerful it kills the user. But then they undo it.
Way to go, Donald.
Yeah.
Is it actually episode 449?
It is. Yes.
I mean, unless we swap the order that we're recording these with the order we release them.
It could be 50.
It's one of the two. But either way, it's time for Waypoint's 2021 Game of the Year podcasts.
Wah, 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 wah.
So,
wait, I think you mean wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, it's like not quite as spectacular as here's what we fit in before the end of the year.
Yes, you've probably gotten used to Waypoint's carefully curated offerings each year. Waypoint, maybe a fun, thematic little release of content across the website and the podcast feeds. This year, you're getting 2 pods, and anything else after that is bonus.
And Patrick's Game of the Year list.
I think I might try to squeeze in right in one at the 11th hour like I did last year.
Go for it. You know,
You have CMS access, right?
And yeah, I do. That's yup.
Then go right ahead, Kato. Feel free.
Kato, you know what? This is your, end of the year meeting. Like, you've grown so much as a writer. I don't think you need edits either. Just put those words right in the CMS. Hit publish.
Fuck. Of this year of all years, that's extra funny to me. Just because, like, what was the last thing I put on the site? It's been ages.
Probably a Pokemon thing, right? That would be my guess.
Yeah, probably. No, I didn't write anything about this Pokemon.
No, but that does not betray my conclusion.
That's true. Pokemon Snap. Pokemon Snap was this year, wasn't it? What was this year? Was it this year? Jesus.
Well, so that is a genuinely a decent transition into talking about the game of the year.
It was April.
Hold on, I'm trying to.
Jesus.
Okay, hold on. So technically, the last article you wrote was when we were still writing articles summarizing the podcast.
Right.
But those don't count.
Right.
So you are entering the Switch course. That's the Switch OLED. Radio Waypoint Radio enters the Beef Zone. Also a podcast. Near Replicant. That's a podcast. Apex Legends new arena mode is perfect for new and returning players. Is that an article?
That's a
podcast.
That's a podcast, but that was one of those That's one of those where I actually had like a little
kind of snuck one in.
Yeah. Might as well talk about that.
New Pokemon Snap is predictably cute, but surprisingly lifeless. April 28th, 2021.
Yeah, there it is.
What is the year? Did that game come out this year? This article says it did. Because when we were discussing sort of how to handle Game of the Year, we just have a lot going on, like smaller staff. Rob and I are in the midst of doing straight up interviews to hopefully expand that staff. I had a kid sick with strep for 2 days this week. Natalie, is straddling contributing here and having a full-time job. It just left us in a place where not really having the bandwidth to do like the really expansive stuff we've done in the past. And then also like when I brought up Game of the Year to Rob, like briefly had a moment of crisis where it was like, I believe you said something to the tune of like, how would I even talk about this year? Did I play video games? Which makes me wonder how Rob Zachney thinks of the year 2021 when he thinks about the video games that he played.
So I feel like so much of this is going to sound like cop-out language or like, I'm sorry, I didn't play enough games. But like, when you're asking me what I think about the year, for me, there was like last winter, and then there is the run-up to Waypoint Plus, and then there's Waypoint Plus.
The run-up to Hot Vac Summer.
Yes. Yes, exactly. All of us getting ready for the new era of
the great fuck was upon
face.
us. But that kind of the tone I took in like the Game of the Year piece that I did write, like because I like doing that exercise and I didn't have a ton on my plate editorial wise this week, and so I did write something. It was like sort of like the fog that like the year that was supposed to be when the fog lifted, and then it was more the case that the fog would lift and then it would like come back down, and then the fog would sort of lift, or you'd tell yourself it had lifted and then it'd come back down. And I just felt like it just made holding on to experiences in games, even ones that were really good or that I cherished, like slippery. I don't know. It seems like they got away from me, and were hard to hold on to, even as I spent the time going back over the games I did really like. There were a bunch of them. That said, like, they didn't really start till like the second half of the year. Like the first half of the year was like me. I keep a list of every game I play, like some meaningful amount, like more than an hour.
Oh, that's smart.
And I wish there was just like a letterboxed like equivalent. Maybe there is, I guess. But like I just do that in my own notes. And then so I can like look back at, let's see what I have here from the start of the year 2021 games played. It's like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Last Campfire, Carto. Ouija? I forget how that game is pronounced. Super Meat Boy Forever, Skull. Like none of those games did anything. That takes me through like February, like inching into March, and it's like Maquette, Minute Racer, Haven. I don't know what Haven. Oh, I remember Haven. Haven was the couple going on to space.
Yeah.
Spire Blast. What's that? I don't know. Red Ronin. What's that? Curse of the Dead Gods. I feel like Austin talked about that at one point. I mean, like, this is like the first half of the year has some highlights, but it's like not really until like a Resident Evil. Oh, not even Resident Evil Village. It's Resident Evil Village Maiden. It was the demo that came out ahead of Resident Evil Village, which is why it's so early on here. So I don't know. Like, for me, it was like a lot of like the first half of 2021 was a blur, and part of what crystallized why that was. Why it could be a blur was because when I looked at the list of games I played, like there just wasn't much that stuck for me in that early part of the year.
Yeah, and see, for me, there definitely was, and I think part of that is also because that was maybe one of the last moments in the year where stuff had space to stick. Because like once we were in the getting ready for the launch of Waypoint Plus, and then the new like things we were on the hook for. That just turned everything into a blur. And then at the end of the year, there's just a stack of games where it's like, man, there's a few I got to put some real time into. There's a bunch I've like put a pin in that I'm like, man, once I'm on break, I'm really going to like enjoy digging into that. I hope there's going to be time.
If I don't play System Shock instead.
You know what though? I woke up thinking about System Shock. Like, what if we'd agree to do a System Shock 101 in the new year? And I was like, that'd be a pretty good way to start the year. And then I was thinking how mad you'd be. And I was like,
the best part of this is this is going to come out after we do our presentations on the Waypoint 101s this Friday.
That's true. No, there would be something pretty funny about doing the System Shock 101 right before they release that remake of System Shock. Maybe you're onto something, Zachney.
I think we guarantee our review would be the most like critically
comprehensive.
By, like, yeah,
comprehensive.
Like we actually did the work.
What's what we're always saying.
So that's kind of my experience of the year. Like I think there was a lot of, for me in the latter half of the year, there's a lot of stuff that I felt like I didn't have space to give a full shake. I think part of it is I'm more confident speaking about like what my favorite games of the year were, or like I guess more I'm confident in what I enjoyed. I'm less confident in like trying to rank stuff when I just know that there wasn't enough like breadth and depth of like experience even within genres to tell you like, you know what though, this one really was special out of all the games that came out this year. And usually I'm closer to that space, right? And this is like one of the first years where I'm like, wow, really limited sample size here. That said, there was some great stuff, and I'm eager to get into it. But Kato, I'm curious, like what your experience of the games of the year was as well.
I don't remember what happened this year versus last year. Basically, I would have, if somebody had asked me before I looked it up 2 minutes ago, I would have bet money that the game Valorant came out this year and not last year.
Didn't Valheim, that came out this year?
Valheim
right?
was this year. Yeah. Let's just say that's why I'm confusing them. But I mean, it's been literally a blur, and like the games that I've played the most of, I think have been multiplayer stuff, because it's one of the few ways to get socialization outside of being on the podcast talking to y'all. So it feels like once I look back at the list of games, I'm like, oh yeah, actually I did enjoy that a lot, but my brain feels fuzzier than even in previous years, where like things caused an impact in the moment, but nothing's sticking in a way that I don't blame the games for, in just the way that, you know, still leaving.
Like I found like COVID since it started.
Yeah.
Even as things, you know, obviously things remain bad for all sorts of reasons, but it's like, you know, like my oldest kid is vaccinated, like me and my wife are boosted, like, you know, like we went out to breakfast for the first time like last weekend, you know, like,
yeah,
you know,
it's December 2021.
Right.
The first time in 2 years. Like,
and but like grasping onto that, like, felt like a big moment, but in the same way that like I feel like I'm grasping on to whatever I can. Like that ended up becoming like the theme of like how I wrote my game of the year. This was like less about like what are the games that felt the best. It's like what are the games where like it broke me out of the malaise, like where I felt something, like it hit me in some way. It doesn't mean it was emotional. Like one of the games on my list is Cruelty Squad, which I played for 0.8 hours, less than a full hour, and yet like that game grabbed me by the fucking throat, and like I was obsessed with it. I ended up writing a feature about it, watching extensive Let's Plays. Like I put in the time with that game. Didn't even enjoy playing it, but it was like that game broke the numbness. Like it got through the malaise, and like with movies and TV, like everything about the last, at this point, like airing on 2 years has been about like, how do you find ways to feel things in an environment that is like trying to numb you, in which you almost have to numb yourself in order to just like get up, get to the next day, like do the thing, in the hopes that at some point, you know, we'll get to a point where you can vary that up a bit. So that's a lot of how I felt looking back at that list. Was similar to you, Kato, being like, oh right, I did really like that, and then trying to remember, but why? Like why did that break through in that moment, and like what was it about it that was powerful or interesting? Because I just feel like that slips away so much faster right now than it did prior to all this starting.
So I know we have like off the wall categories, but you want to have a more like sincere talk about like the stuff that did hit on that level for us? Yeah,
it's everyone have like a one. It doesn't have to be like your game of the year, but like I don't know, like if you think of games that like that did that, like that broke through that wall.
So
I think some of those will come up in the categories, but like I figure like it's still worth sort of like planting that flag and like the game that you are still thinking about.
Yeah, there's some things that I think like I'd love to resurface from the start of the year, and some of this is like, are these actually 2021 games? Well, a bunch of them are like December 2020 games that like
might as well be January games.
Yeah. And so like, you know, if I go back through, for me, the racing game of the year, and maybe the racing game in the last couple of years, was like Art of Rally, which is just so unspeakably fucking cool and beautiful that I still can't get over it. And mind you, this is a year where Forza Horizon 5 came out. And I'm still like, Forza Horizon 5 is really cool. I like it a lot. Art of Rally is something special. Like, Art of Rally is doing something that I think it's probably a stretch to say I haven't seen it done before in racing games, but I haven't seen it done in a long time. Because remember, there used to be, and I want to say like maybe the 90s, early 2000s, sort of what I guess we'll call like the low poly era. When the genre like had more entrants in it, and it was being less driven by like licensing deals, and there were more like speculative racing games, like fictional cars and shit.
I mean, the racing genre is a sim genre at this point. Like there are arcade offshoots, but even the ones like Horizon, it's still licensing driven. It becomes a gotcha game to collect the fancy cars, but it is less punishing in terms of turning the corners.
And Art of Rally is taking historical race cars and just filing just enough off the branding and the styling to like say, this is not a VW bug. It's whatever our fictional version of it is. But the thing that really leaps out, and if you're by a computer, you should probably look up screenshots for this game because it's tough to describe. But like, it has this beautiful, hyper-saturated, blocky, low poly look to it, but it is so gorgeously lit and so like gorgeously rendered, and the models have so much character. And then to top it off, all the races are procedural. So rally racing is just point-to-point racing, and what you're up against is just the conditions on the track. They race on gravel roads, dirt roads, all the different characters. And there's a bunch of good rally games. But the thing that a lot of racing games end up with is you're so locked in on the cockpit and locked in on what your car is doing. There's very little sense of like taking in the beautiful world. I think even Forza Horizon 5 has this problem. They haven't licked it. You can back the camera up as much as you want. You're still going to be staring at that ribbon of circuit ahead of you to try and like figure out what, like, just try to anticipate what's happening next, what you need to do. Art of Rally is really bold. There's no in-car view in that game. You are super far back. And furthermore, the camera is not locked to like straight on the back of your bumper. however they've done it with their procedural rendering, there's places where the camera works a little more like a TV camera would. And so as you begin like moving down a series of switchbacks, for instance, it's not like the camera perfectly swings around to catch those series of switchbacks. It will take a moment to slow, like you will sort of like start to almost turn out of the frame as the camera swings around and shows you the track ahead and then like swoops back in on your tail. And so like at every turn, Art of Rally is one, a really challenging, really technical racing game that is incredibly rewarding at like learning how to drive these cars and like across different eras as the technology changes. But then on the other hand, you just don't even care if you're good. You just do not even care how the races are turning out because like the music and the look and just the vibe of this game is so incredible. And you know, you're talking about like games that make you feel something. Art of Rally is like a vacation for your brain in a lot of ways. It is just such a breath of fresh air and such an amazing world to go spend time in. That for me is like, it didn't get wide console release until much later in the year. And I feel like it never had that moment where like the critical mass of buzz attached to it because of the way it rolled out. But man, do I think this deserved to have like a much more of an outsized like part of the racing game conversation than it ended up having. Not to say it was a failure. I don't know about that, but like, I feel like there are a lot of people out there who would love Art of Rally, and the reason they don't is probably because they haven't played it.
Yeah, it's weird how the arcade racer, like where it fits in gaming these days, which is to say, like it basically doesn't, right? Like, I don't know, like post Burnout Paradise, like it seems like we live in largely a sim world. Not that there aren't games like this, but it feels like they exist on the fringes as opposed to, you know, we used to live in a world where like Ridge Racer was a platform, you know, a hardware seller. Like the arcade racers like were a reason to play video games. And now that's just like, that's just not really the case anymore. Like maybe Ridge Racer 7, like that was a PS2 game, right? Or maybe that was one of the early ones. But like that's one of the last times I can remember like racing games, arcade racing games used to be at the tip of the sphere of like, this is how you're going to sell how video games look. And now that's just been taken over by Sims.
Yeah, I think it's the classic thing of being able to afford licensing deals also implies just a certain amount of resources to throw at a project, right? Yeah. And so it sort of defaulted to the minute you had the haves of studios who were able to do these licensing deals with major car manufacturers and the have-nots who were having to fictionalize their cars, fictionalize racetracks, because you also have to like do licensing deals with a lot of the circuits themselves. And I don't even know how true that is, but that is now the framework in which everyone operates, right? Like I don't know how tested in the court of law some of this shit is, but that is now the formula for how all this works. And yeah, I think what ended up kind of happening is it bifurcated the space where people who made arcade racers were also now no longer making stuff on the cutting edge of technology. All the cutting edge stuff had the actual cars and the actual circuits and the actual locales in it. And I think that sort of created this division. And so now even stuff that's still fundamentally an arcade racer still has a weird simmy vibe because everything's so lovingly modeled and detailed because the branding deals probably come with a ton of guidelines. Like, why don't cars wreck as satisfyingly as they did in Burnout games? Because Lamborghini doesn't want to show the driver's survival cell getting crumpled up like a piece of tissue paper and thrown off a bridge. Like Lamborghini's like, no, you'll be fine.
Damn it!
I was gonna say like one of my fondest memories playing a racing game were the old, I think these were made by Psygnosis, Destruction Derby, the PS1 games that were all about like, man, let's fucking crunch these polygons and like we're just gonna actually just dump you into a circle pit and you're just gonna bust into a bunch of like I played so much Destruction Derby 1 and 2 with my brother back in the day because it was just fun to just bash the shit out of these cars. None of them were licensed, you know. This was all just like generic looking stuff, at least as far as I can remember. But stuff like that just doesn't. It's also just that there's less of a market for it, right? It's like the expectations for how you want a racing game to look have shifted towards realism, even in probably like the arcadey space. And at that point, well, who's going to spend money, like more money than the launch product? Like, well, probably people who are interested in the cars and thus are then interested in, you know, the equivalent of a battle pass or buying DLC for like specific cars that they like. Whereas if it's like me, who's like, I just want to watch the cars hit each other. You know, like that's like less of a compelling pitch in a world in which to make back the budgets on these games, like you need to exist past the $60 that you spend at the start.
So just to, like, since we're into the racing game discussion, one thing I want to shout out here, aside from Forza Horizon 5, F1 2021 did have a really interesting story mode. Like, definitely more successful than, like, I would say more successful than Madden Longshot. Mm-hmm. And I'm not necessarily saying, like, you know, if you're not into the racing sims, like F1 2021 is the game for you. I don't know if that's true. It's still, like, I think it's a lot of fun. I have internalized how those games feel and, like, what you're supposed to do in them. It's pretty natural at this point, playing them year in, year out for like 11 years at this point. But the thing that's really cool is it's not like just a little morsel of story. They really go fully in telling the story that is about, like, on the one hand, a young rookie whose story mirrors that of a couple like young F1 drivers right now, probably most notably Alex Albon. So like sort of a F1 racer of like mixed like British and I don't know if they ever say exactly where he's from. He's like British and East Asian. I don't think I'm not sure they pin it down beyond that, but like it's implied his family is not with him. He's sort of marooned in this world of F1 and trying to get up to speed. And his teammate is this guy, you know, if it's an American sports movie, he's definitely played like Kevin Costner, just a dude at the end of a long road of a sports career and kind of struggling with like what that means. And the fact that like the sport is moving on from you. And you're still in there trying to, you still think you got enough and that you shouldn't be like fighting for your place in that way. And it's sort of about their clashes. And what's really cool, I didn't talk about this at the time because it was a bit of a spoiler. They shift perspectives midway through. Like the first half, you were totally the young gun. And you're like, man, why is this guy being such a dick? He's always undercutting me. He's like, he's always setting me up in these situations to fail. And the way the campaign is told is you have these cutscenes that then do lead you to these racing scenarios. And they're actually really well crafted racing scenarios, where the narrative moment, there's enough left for you to do as a player that the moment does land and you sort of like feel like you earned the outcome. But at the same time, it's not so open-ended that like you might just have a boring race. It's really well handled, but midway through it shifts perspective and you like literally the camera, like I think it's a 2-shot and suddenly you're looking like at the young kid, and instead of following him out of the conversation like you always do, you follow the old guy back to his trailer as like his wife sort of like confronts him with the fact that he's being the worst version of himself. And it's a little soapy, but I'm like, this is another direction things could go. And it would be a shame if they don't keep up with this experiment, because I think it was pretty damn interesting. Because like, there's so many interesting sports narratives, but there hasn't been a lot of success in translating that into any sort of narrative experience in a game. I'm not sure that Longshot pulled that off. I don't know if the FIFA games did, but like,
and the capturing like off the field or, you know, off the track drama is difficult. I think partially because it's not dramatized in the real world either, right? Like, so What are you capturing, right? Like, you know, the most we get is the equivalent of, you know, Hard Knocks, during the NFL season. I guess they did one mid-season with the Colts at the moment. But like, I think that's part of the difficulty for any of these games trying to do that is like, what is the material you're like even pulling from? Like, is it, you know, like any given Sunday? Like, you know, like it's difficult because there's just not like a wealth of material to even structure how you tell these stories. I think that like leads to complications on these games trying to forge that ground on their own.
Well, and I guess it helps too. Like in F1, it's like in terms of the action, it's an individual sport, And so that's the other part is like in football, it's pretty hard to concoct a situation where the same, like, it's all on this player and all the narrative.
I gotta follow this offensive lineman around. Like, it's the QB. Like, it always has to be the QB.
It has to be.
It's the equivalent of the driver. It's the,
yeah. And even then, it doesn't really map because the QB is so dependent on other shit and, like, so much of the team is built around them. Whereas F1, it works a little more, like, it's a little closer. And so I think the dramatization works a bit better. And so that's maybe the other thing I would toss out there at the other extreme is like, okay, this is a pretty like simmy racing series, and their solution to this problem of, okay, well, what do we offer people who do not just want to like who don't just want to fuck these cars? Well, we create sort of our own version of like what documentary series like Drive to Survive and movies like Rush sort of imply about the sport, and we sort of crafted that for our own game. And I think that's another interesting thing to call out in terms of the space. Like, I'm not sure the game as a whole made me feel a lot because it's so familiar at this point that I was like, yep, it's the annual entry, but that story did.
So the funny part is, Natalie was supposed to be on this podcast. She had some work stuff to attend to. This would probably be the moment where it'd be like, well, probably the game of the year for everybody is Inscription, right? I almost feel like we should punt on talking about that game until the mailbag, and we'll just do it there.
Yes, we'll figure out a way to slip it in.
I will ask. I have something that is along the lines of what you're talking about, Rob, and I'll get to that in a second. But like, is everyone's game of the year Inscription? Rob, like, when you got to the end of that, we can at least tease that larger discussion here. I'm curious where Inscription lands. That's the difficulty of just having experienced a thing and gone through the high of it. Figuring out where that lands with you emotionally.
It's in competition with two others.
Okay.
I think.
And what are those two others?
So one of them is a very late entry from last year, but like, again, super late, didn't get much attention this year. Suzerain. Absolutely one of my games of the year. Everyone should play it. It is a geopolitical, like, visual novel, basically. And it's genius. It is, I think I talked extensively about it on the pod, but just to remind folks, it is a visual novel where you are the newly elected president in the first, like, pseudo like legitimate presidential elections this country has had in like
I remember
60 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about this for a while. You're talking about Austin, yeah.
Right. And the entire thing is built on the bones of like two different like flavors of authoritarian regime. And you're sort of poised between this like either a neoliberal reboot or like a drift towards socialism or maybe fascism. And you're sort of at the hinge point for all these things. And you kind of have to navigate this situation because you're handed a shitty hand and you're this unity candidate. And it turns out unity means something different to everyone. And so even in your coalition, there's people who are like, well, hang on. I actually kind of liked some of the fascist police state stuff. So like, do what you want with economics, but like, we should have the secret police have like carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want. And then there's other people who are like, I think the best thing for unity would be to like nationalize industry and like collectivize agriculture. And like those things are irreconcilable, but the way all that plays out is really well handled. And also, it's not just a geopolitical like turn knob toward fascism or communism. It is also like a personal drama. It is about like where the personal meets the political. And there is stuff late in that game. If you want to hear like a full spoiler cast, freelance writer, frequently seen at Rock Paper Shotgun, Sin Vega and I did a full spoiler cast of this over on 3 Moves Ahead. I think it was one of our best pods this year, where we get into some of the late game stuff where like, there are a lot of things you start to suspect like are going to be major plot beats early on. The way it all plays out is genuinely shocking, and there's so many different ways the novel can come out that like talking about it with other people who played it and made different choices was fucking mind blowing. Like there's a moment where because Sin had made different choices than I had, things that I could never understand, like why does this keep happening? Why is this so fucked up? Sin had actually uncovered why. And it involved like somebody that I disagreed with, but like thought was fundamentally like trustworthy, hatching just a bonkers conspiracy that I never uncovered. I did not know it was in this world. And like that stuck with me. Like, I think that is a game that everyone needs to play. I don't know if I put it ahead or behind Inscription, but it is up there. And I guess the other one for me is Hell Let Loose, which is just what a fucking experience. Goddamn. We talked a lot about it. Not much more to say, but like a really well executed like squad multiplayer shooter set in World War II. I generally I enjoy, but I tend toward like the lukewarm on a lot of games like this. Mm-hmm. This one has such a vibe, and its approach to like forcing teams to function as teams and like have the friction of like, how do you cooperate in this environment? I think the solutions work really well. I think the community helpfully sort of self-selected to make that work in a way that like Battlefield can never count on, because they have to sort of allow for all types of players. But that being said, just in terms of like sheer hours logged, that was one of my games of the year, and like I do not feel bad about any of that time.
What about you, Kata?
I mean, I think it has to be Inscription. I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like this is the not Inscription. What are the because I'm in the same boat, right? Like it was Boomerang X until oh no, that's Inscription's music.
By God.
But I'm curious, like what are some others towards the top that you want to shout out that like left a real mark, even if they weren't burned into your brain the same way.
God, I mean, one of the ones that was funnily enough kind of leaning into monotony in a way, but that's kind of why it hooked me in a weird way, was Loop Hero. I ended up playing so many hours of that game because it felt like, like we were kind of forced into a certain new kind of trappedness, but this loop, there was like things I could, exert more force on basically and break out of it eventually. But I just, it was also like the perfect like amount of idle that I could put it on while doing other things, which is not normal for any other game usually. Like I could kind of, once I like got under the mechanics of that game, there was a moment where you can make it into an idle game, even though it really isn't at first. But it just like, it hit because it was like, oh yeah, I wake up, I get in this chair, I do my job, I go to sleep. I'm not leaving the house, right? Like here's my loop that I'm stuck into that my normal ways of breaking out of are no longer available to me, right? And so like seeing that aside, this like, story of people stuck, people finding a way like through a darkness, and like the answer to that being kind of community is what it ends up doing. Like you start building and pulling people out of this loop into a small town that ends up also working, it becomes like where you get upgrades and stuff, but the characters there kind of like start remembering more of their lives, start becoming fuller people as you start to break the monotony of those loops. And like, that really was like, I mean, I don't actually know when they started developing that game, but it feels very much like someone early pandemic was like, look, I'm gonna, if we're gonna be stuck in a loop, I'm gonna make something about that, right? Like, because then it comes out a year into the pandemic happening. So it's like, I think it's
not far off that right? the original Game Jam was December 2019,
right?
And so it's like
the thought was there, just in a different way. Maybe
it was seeded.
Right, the way that it lined up with kind of like the reality we were all thrust into, just like when that game, like I just fell into that game hard when that hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, before we take a break and get into the categories people submitted, the one that, in the spirit of game from earlier this year that I thought might hit, but like didn't for whatever reason was Mundaun, which is a horror game from early in 2021.
I never got around to that.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, it's a game in which I think video games try so hard to create like layers of abstraction, like through the worlds that they build, and like part of what I thought was so beautiful about Mundaun was that it's a game that got a lot of headlines, rightfully so, because its art looks hand drawn. It keeps like the mistakes and that kind of mid creation draftiness of the art in what you see around you. And I thought that really humanized like the playing of the game in a way that was really interesting and added to just the experience of being around this world where frequently it's hard to tell like who touched this, how did they touch this, with teams being so big and just the scale of games and the technology used to make games. And in Mundaun, it's like, oh no, like I see the brushstroke, like I see the pen, like I can see it here because it is in the game and not hidden. The mistakes are part of the aesthetic, and it's also a good spooky game. Like being tracked down by giant stalks of hay. A sequence on the mountain in which a kind of a yeti type creature like is going after you is absolutely one of the scariest moments I've had in games in the last couple of years. And it's like you had said about Art of Rally, Rob. Like I was just sort of waiting, like all right, like it didn't really land widely with people here like when it came out, but hopefully it'll be one of those games at the end of the year people are like, oh shit, Mundaun, like more people need to play this. It's like, no, that doesn't seem to be happening either. And like I don't know if that's COVID, I don't know if that's just sometimes that doesn't happen to those games that you're hoping get that wider audience at a certain moment. It was one of those that I was kind of hoping would get picked up by Game Pass or something, like it's a little rickety, it's made largely by one person. It's got its faults like as a result of that, but like there's so much here that is worth digging into if any of it is appealing to you. And it would have been with a kind of game where it's like, oh, if you just can click a button and check it out, maybe a wider audience might have found it. But this would be my moment to.
Do you think it's working in a style of horror that maybe gamers were not like it? Like, I think the language of horror in games. This is maybe too broad a statement, but like throw it out there and you tell me if I'm fucking wrong.
Sure.
But like I feel like the language of horror in games tends to be a lot of like darkness forward, dread forward, maybe not always gore forward, but it tends to play a pretty major role. And so when I think about stuff like, Amnesia tends to operate in that space of like you're getting this claustrophobic like hell hell hallway for much of the game, or the Resident Evil thing where it's like here's a fucked up place, even more fucked up than it appears. Here's a gun, shoot them. Or it's like Outlast type shit, right? Where it's like you're just under constant pressure. Hurry up, it's gonna get you. And I felt like with Mundaun, playing it and then also just in the way it looks a lot of times, because the scariest moments are not things that are going to appear in the marketing because they will like reveal things to you. But like I feel like the pitch from Mundaun, it's type of horror that I think in film seems like it's become much easier to sell audiences.
Yeah, Mundaun is an A24, right?
Like, I know what's up with that. Yeah, that was great. Yeah. And I feel like in the horror space and games, Mundaun is completely coming out of left field.
Well, this is just a pet theory. I think it's supported by a lot of evidence, but I think the horror games have been forever sort of tainted by the appeal to be good on streaming and on Let's Plays, in which horror games have now been engineered from the jump to be like, how are these going to elicit a reaction from the player that is going to play well in this broader space for how they are played? And like, I can't fault developers there. Like it makes sense to think about how are people actually playing these games when they go out into the world? And well, like the truth of the matter is like a lot of people are experiencing them through other people playing them. And then thus that is going to influence the design in a way that creates reactions from the player, so it is also pleasing to the audience. And then maybe some measure of that audience that's watching also ends up wanting to play. And that's not as easy as just saying all games are emphasizing jump scares. That's part of it. But I do think what we have seen in like the post Amnesia, like Amnesia being a huge part of popularizing the Let's Play. As a result of that game getting enormous reactions from folks like PewDiePie and like contributing to that, like that seismic shift in how those games are experienced by a wider populace. Mundaun exists on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is like quiet. It has jump scares, like it has very scary moments, but it is just operating at a different frequency in a way that it's harder to market in the space in which horror games currently exist in. And doesn't mean those can't be popular, but I think there's a reason that either horror games tend to go in one of two directions currently, which is that they are jump scare factories to get reactions from the player that will play well on streaming or on VODs, or their actions. Like they give you guns, right? And like we look at like Alan Wake 2, right? I'm excited they're saying that they're going for full horror, but they're saying like, survival horror. And it's like, well, there's going to be guns, like there's going to be explosions. Like it's not going to be just running around with a flashlight. It's Dead Space, which is scary as hell. And like I love the Dead Space games. But again, it's like you've got a gun and you're shooting, and it's like it's harder for these quieter things to find their place. Which I guess is all to say more people should check out Mundaun. I think this is a good time to take a break. We'll come back and then we will run through the categories that a bunch of folks submitted. All right, we're back. We asked you, the listeners, to write in, and you obliged. You wrote in a ton of possible Game of the Year categories for us to run through. I picked 20. That said, like a number of these there were overlaps. So I apologize if I do not credit you for the one that you also submitted. But look, like 7 people wrote in, like Derek, to say, I need to know what y'all's inscription card of the year is, which I think we can safely do here. And we'll then also give Natalie the space to give her inscription card of the year. But given that you just finished that game, Rob, congratulations. And you had I feel like probably compared to Kato and I, all of the cards, so many cards,
every card.
A bounty of cards.
They saw every card in that second part.
You could choose from any card. What is the one that you come back to? What is the one that still speaks to you, that gave you delight every time that it came up as something you could play?
Oh my gosh. To choose just one.
I know.
So fucking hard.
I know.
So I'm not going to. I'll give you 2 from different ends of the spectrum.
Sure.
The obvious one is our Ouroboros.
I feel like it can't. I feel like that is one where we're taking off the table.
Are we? But that was
yes.
Shit.
I know it's awesome, but it's just
so
it's
good.
It's unfair. It's OP. It's
the
OP,
point, and that's why
it's
OG.
Good. I know. Too useful. Like, I feel like part of the reason I want to take it off the table is because it's like it speaks to us all. Like, there's no there's no conflict there. It's like we all pray at the altar of the snake god. In his infinite death and his infinite wisdom. So what's the other one, Rob?
This comes up multiple times throughout this game, but it was the first time, I think, that we'd had a card that did this. It was the infinite sack cat in the first part of the game. It was the first time.
I didn't use that one. How does that card operate?
So I think we also put a sigil on it, but like the cat is.
You ended up getting a 3-blood sigil on that cat, didn't you?
I think we did.
Yeah.
So every time we sacked it, it didn't die. It would just it would stay in place. Like we'd sack it, and then I think it just remains played.
Yeah.
Where it sits, which can be a problem. Like you can't fuck yourself that way.
It could get stuck.
Because so
it's similar to the infinite squirrels cheat. Well, not cheat. I mean, the game, is built
I think at this point,
like,
it's become increasingly clear to me that the game wants you to have infinite squirrels there because it's given infinite the infinite totem to like everyone that I've watched through who's played this game, and it's like, oh, this is just them being like, here's a little help, which is great.
But the squirrel leaves the board.
Yeah. Yes.
Unlike your cat.
Whereas this one, it's just like we were able now to basically deploy our entire hands at will. And once we done that, it kind of was like we've arrived at a new stage of Inscription, which is, the game will just let us just rip the like mechanics to pieces and shatter any notion of game balance, and it encourages us to do that. And that was a lot of fun. It was sort of, and at that point, like, I think it was a dangerous discovery because it also turned Inscription into what else could we do in this game? It turns out quite a bit, but that card like stands out in my memory as the real Inscription starts here, right? Which is the stop trying to win these little close fought card games. Try to break the entire card game.
Yeah, its definition of min-max is different than what you think it is.
Yeah.
going in, because it operates on a different stratosphere. It was funny. I had to add this after watching the end of your stream as I was thinking through the ones that spoke to my heart. Like, man, fucking the Sniper Sentry card was like just. I was so glad you got 2 of them, the same way that I got 2 of them, like towards the end of my run there in Act 3. Because that one was just such fun to deploy. But when I like truly think about it, like, and you guys had this instance, and I was glad that you had the same revelation. Was like, my boy Mantis out here just doing work. Mantis God, like, is where I settled. So I think Mantis God was like the one, like, so that's what the most time in Act 1, right? Like, that's why I unlike the 2 of you, it took me so much longer to like get my head around the game, and then I flew through Acts 2 and 3 a lot faster. But every time Mantis came up, it was like on the table going like, Mantis. Like, I just such a fun card because of just the way you could deploy it on the board, and just like, it just made me so happy every time Mantis not just like appeared as a possibility for my deck, but then when it actually, like, I pulled it and was like, okay, like, how do I go out of my way to use this, even if it's not actually optimal strategy for finishing this round, because it's just really fun.
There's too many, but I think ultimately, one of the linchpins in me understanding this game, and then like the thing that I carried through the rest of the game the most, was when Undiable Squirrels first hit. And like the idea that like, this game wants you to break its economy. Like, it wants you to be able to play whatever you want to play if you can be clever about it, right? Like, once that hit, it's just like, it was so beautiful. Like, I only ever needed 2 scrolls in my hand, and then I could play whatever the fuck I wanted. And then like that kind of trickled forward into like, understanding the energy system and being like, once I hit 6, I'm gonna get 6 every single time. How do I get to 6 as quickly as possible with the robot cards? Because that's the deck I ended up playing in part 2, which dovetailed really nicely into part 3, where it's just more of the robot, and like they give you even more. Like, I didn't end up doing this in my run, but like that card that y'all made in the stream of the the fucking energy bot that cost 1, and then you could bop to like get your energy to 6 on like turn 2. Like, that shit was just amazing. And like, it's the sort of things that like traditional card games like Magic the Gathering, like, quickly, when that sort of loophole is found, things are like quickly banned in like actual tournaments, and like sometimes even like the digital version, there'll be like ban lists that happen like the day after a set comes out, because it's like, whoops, we didn't see that specific interaction. But like, it's very obvious that these interactions were kind of built in, and they're so fun to play with that like, yeah, my card is, I guess, infinite squirrels, but it's really the one, any of the cards that let you completely bust open the energy economy in that game.
So I can't remember if I credited Derek for that one. That's the one I actually pulled. Next up, the Tone Deaf Decision of the Year, presented by David Cage, submitted by Raine. It's
God.
like I had a pick for this, which was I know it is not as high stakes as everything else, but it was like the Red Ring of Death poster that Microsoft is selling, because the way that they are turning what was a generational fraud into a funny meme joke, as someone was there reporting on that and like listening to Peter Moore like lie to the public over and over about like a manufacturing default in the Xbox is fucked. But then it's like I wake up every day, and it doesn't really fit that category of like Tone Deaf Decision of the Year. That like the Red Ring fits that better, but like just reading like the Stalker NFT thing this morning, like it's the first thing I saw. Like my kids I heard my youngest. She's the alarm bell. Like she wakes up first. That's when everyone else gets up. I hear my youngest making a noise. I go and get her. Then we wake up the oldest. We get them both into bed with like a banana and like Cheerios. And then my wife and I look at our phones for 10 minutes before like the morning has to truly begin. And the first thing I saw was, GSC Game World or whatever is selling NFTs for Stalker 2. And it's just like rubbing my temple, because it's just like the latest version of, Peter Molyneux and Will Wright. And it's like, if this is happening, like we are, even though it feels like it's happening so fast, I feel like we're at the tip of the iceberg of so much worse shit happening next year. I don't know where it goes, but it just sucks. Like, it's not tone deaf. It just fucking sucks. Yeah.
It's also patently, at best, value neutral in terms of, not in terms of like environmental costs or what does the ecosystem, but just like if you're being as charitable as possible, the coolest outcome you can get from this shit seems to be, like that's it, right? That's it. It's like we're talking about this completely ridiculous reimagining of like how digital goods work, which in itself is like kind of not paradoxical, but like it's already kind of an illusion, right? Like it's already kind of, there's no reason that commerce like in digital spaces already had to take the shape that it does. But when you're trying to add this idea of like digital scarcity, of turning little widgets and gadgets into special assets that people will both speculate in.
Purely to create a speculative market. It is scarcity for the sake of a bubble before it bursts. And you're just every day is just watching a new
trying to create baseball cards where there ain't even baseball.
Now, yes, on one hand,
just looking at Diablo 3 and being like, yeah, let's do that, but more.
I know. But like I say, on one hand, is this all terrible? It's bad for the environment. All true. I'm with you. On the other hand, you do get people like Peter Molyneux out here giving interviews again, having to talk about it, and having to give. I'm paraphrasing a quote from a Verge interview with Molyneux, but basically, like the interviewer said, like the game he's building is something like you're building towns, yada yada yada, and like the interviewer's asked, like sounds a bit like a company town, like. That doesn't have a good connotation. He's like, oh yeah, definitely company towns. Like they used to do that stuff all the time, and they're doing it in China right now. And it's like, this is bad, but also I miss this. Where you can get Peter Molyneux to go out here and be like, company towns are great. Look, I built a game about company towns. It's like that's
home and
delicious.
neighborhood in Chicago is beautiful. I have no further questions. Wow, what an interesting historical community. Wonder what happened here. Probably just cool shit. I mean, that stuff is mortifying, and I think what's extra exhausting is the degree to which it just feels like we're all in this fucking siege of like few people actually want this. You're just being bombarded by, what's the way to put it? Ideological evangelists for this shit.
Yeah.
Who like it because they like the idea of a world where everything is commodified, where everything has a price tag. And the idea of like commodifying more stuff and finding new ways to attach a price to something is inherently awesome. That's a very small group of people, but they are always very loud. And then there's people who are like genuinely excited about, well, maybe these things could do all sorts of interesting things in creative spaces. And those people are marks for the most part. But they are also, again, like very noisy. And I think most people have a reaction. I think normal people probably have very little reaction to this at all. Right? It's probably like, I don't know. And then there's
a new internet thing. The Today Show ran a segment on NFTs, and they're like, huh.
Right.
So you can like buy an image? That seems weird. I'm going to go pick up my kids.
Right. And it's just this constant bombardment of like, this is the future. This is inevitable. And anyone like raising questions or opposing it is somehow a stick in the mud, or they just don't see the vision. And it's like, I think a lot of people see the vision. The thing they don't have is the massive capital backing to broadcast their message 24/7 about like how this is the future. Right. So it's just like we are just steeped in NFT nonsense against our will.
Because and also dismantling the argument is exhausting, right? When like my response to all of it is like, well, this sounds fucking stupid. With like, and you stack that against, giant, ideological tweet threads explaining, oh, well, actually Web3, yada, yada, yada. And it's just like, I don't even want to do it. Like, I don't have the energy to respond to the argument because I don't buy the argument in the first place. And so I think that's where a lot of people are at, is just exhausted.
Well, and also the Web 2 was entire, like, that marked the shift into platform capitalism. And now you're expanding sort of the underpinnings of platform capitalism to fucking everything, everywhere, forever, right? And I do not buy the notion that like there's a field leveling effect of decentralization. These things are not decentralized in that way, and because of like the preconditions for the field being established, that can never be level. So like I find all of this just, as you said, exhausting. And and basically it is trying to attach itself to like the progress myth as like this is a natural evolution for the internet. And it's like, but the internet has often evolved for the worst. Like just like in terms of what the space is for like art and creativity and expression. Yeah. The trend has not been great there. Convenience has been nice. That's been the treat, right? But in terms of like access and openness, the trend is bad. And this is not, I do not see a departure from that trend. What I see is a lot of people cynically promising sort of a new beginning. But yes, it is to turn everyone to a company town.
And not even new, because some of the arguments, especially earlier on, were like about, digital artists can sell their work the way that,
like Beeple's masterpiece.
Just like the blue chip system, the commodification of art is bad. Like, come the fuck on. Like, those things are not good for normal artists. It creates a system where a select few can ever like truly quote unquote make it. That is not a good system to support arts happening more often. Like, so this is looking towards that sort of commodification. It's not going to be better for artists. It's going to be better for a very select few artists. And then everyone else gets thrown under the bus if they A, don't want to engage with that market, or B, try to and don't find any success because it's about speculation, right? And it turns the game into like, no, you can't support your you should be supporting artists directly, and you shouldn't care how many times they sell that image or whatever if it's digital and it can be copied. The point is that you're supporting a person. That should be the impetus behind purchasing art, is like, I am patronizing you to keep being creative, right? Instead, they're looking at the fucking horrible art world, which is part of the reason I got the fuck out. Which is like, well, I'm not gonna be able to fucking compete with that shit. So, and it's just like drives me insane. Like, it's like, we've already done this. It's not good for anyone.
But now we can just scale the shittiness of that to be everywhere and always at all times. So the last thing I'll say is, in terms of horrible year for actually. Good year in terms of things being brought to light that have for too long been buried, right? Like, I think that's the upshot to this. Is
and also we should, like on the one hand, the summer is the beginnings of our better understandings of how the horrible operations of Activision Blizzard. And as we record this, today, this morning, the first North American video game developer union was formed. Like, that's fucking cool. Yeah. Like, that's a big moment. You know, it's a small team. It was voluntarily recognized by this, you know, the studio's owner. So there wasn't like a bunch of acrimony in the way most all unions are typically formed, in which there's a struggle with management to get that sort of like approved and have the process going. But like, you had to start somewhere, right? And I don't know that that union is formed if things like at Activision Blizzard like if that doesn't come to light. Who knows if that prompts that union happening? I don't know. Like, I haven't talked to those folks who are organizing that, but you know, that is kind of like the yin and the yang of that. It's like all that stuff is terrible. That company needs to get better, and hopefully it can. But also then you look at, you know, getting an email about a union forming, and it's like, shit, like things can get better. Like, those people can organize, and it was probably more likely to start at smaller places and work its way up than it was for Activision Blizzard to unionize. But you know, the bricks are laid somewhere.
And I think to that point, I think the actual, like, I don't even know if is it tone deaf or just nakedly cynical, but the initial approach of Activision and like Codex leadership to be like, basically take the we're trying to find the guy who did this approach to to harassment and misconduct at initially when it was like mostly focused on Blizzard, for them to be like, God damn, Blizzard sure is fucked up, huh? Wow. Well, we're gonna get right on fixing that. The watch
good thing both names are in the title, so we can point at the other one and be like, well, we just run Warzone over here, like, we're fine.
So
those Blizzard
like,
guys.
That to me is the like, that stuff should always just be laughed out of the room when like when you've been incumbent for that long. You can't be like, all right, well, it's time to clean this up, man. If you picked up a broom in the last 20 years you've been there, you wouldn't be in this situation, right? But like this pretense of like, I'm shocked there's gambling going on in this establishment. That's maybe the actual like most serious tone deaf thing. The thing that sort of cracked me up though, the way Keeley tried to walk the tightrope at the Game Awards and fell the fuck off.
Oh, and you know what? It's so funny because not that it took a wizard to predict what I did, which was exactly what he ended up doing. The thing that made me just chortle was when he said, he added the online communities.
Yes.
It's like, you fucking asshole.
It was like,
you can't just do the bare minimum, which is like, no, then we also like, but also like the toxic gamers out there, like tisk. It's like, come on.
And also it's like, it was very funny because it also just felt like this in 2021, Gamergate is on notice. Better knock that shit off or it's over for you bozos.
We got real feminist up here.
So that like not the most serious version of it, but I think it was such a ham-fisted way to try and address this, where like the people he ended up calling out directly were online communities, and everything else was like, everyone deserves to feel safe. And it's like, well, the online communities thing
at their jobs too, which is the only concession he made in this whole thing, but then immediately swapped to the
right, and so
Gamers Online, call this hotline.
That could easily be construed as like, damn, it's rough out there for community managers and like public-facing devs,
God. Which is true.
But that's been true for years. This is the other thing, is like calling out online communities in 2021. Guess what? That conversation's been happening for like a decade. So you're late to that, and also you are very pointedly avoiding just acknowledging that a number of the marquee publishers who are part of this event are extremely implicated in these stories. And there's just no running from that. And trying to do that sidestep was embarrassing.
Agreed. Next up, we have the best, Daniel submitted a best loop experience. This was one that a lot of people picked up on. And they included some of the ones from this year that I don't know if there are other ones, but people can point them out if there's ones missed here. Deathloop, Loop Hero, Echoes of the Eye, which is hopefully going to be one of my holiday games that I play. The expansion to why am I blanking? Kato, help me here.
Oh, which one is it? Which one is it? Wilds.
Outer Wilds, which is apparently very good and like exceptionally horror-y from what I understand.
Still really upset that I haven't been able to get to that.
I don't have an answer on this because I started and did not finish Deathloop, but I will. I started and ended up falling off of Loop Hero because I didn't much like care for. Like I respect what it is doing.
I'll be honest, I didn't like it that much either. So
I had a very intense love affair for about 2 hours before it was like it just completely fell off. It feels like that.
2 hours, I was like, all right, well played, Loop Hero. Hour 3, all right, I need to stop going fucking circles.
Yeah,
I'm not fighting.
I feel like you go in two directions with that game at that point. You either go where Kato and Gita went, or you go where Rob and I went. It's just like you burn hot and bright, and then you turn into a lump of coal, or it's just like you keep burning hot and bright and turn into a comet.
Burning forever.
But I guess I'd be curious. I'm not sure if we need to pick a best loop experience because like I think we're all over the map on this. But where did everyone end up on Deathloop by the end of this year? It was a game that I feel like we all quite liked in the moment. But my feel on like where that game has ended up by the end of the year is a lot of people maybe have cooled on it since. Don't talk about it in the same way they talk about a Prey or a Dishonored. It was like a neat concept, but maybe didn't mentally stick. But I don't know, Rob, was that like a COVID thing, or is that, speaks to just the game being like a stronger premise than it is an experience?
For me, it felt like it just outstays its welcome a bit. I think part of it is there is a gap between you basically figuring a lot of the things out that are sort of critical path and then you actually sewing up the game. And in that gap, like as you're trying to figure out like what are the last things I need to make happen here. And I got kind of stuck because either I did something slightly wrong or an event just didn't fire for me that should have, but like it took me forever. It took me forever to get to the actual like last run. I was like, I know how to kill all 7 of these fuckers. How do I get to the assassin? What's her name? I forget both their names. Is it Cole?
You play as Cole, and then you're talking about the reason I stopped playing because of the spoiler between them two.
Yeah.
God, what is her name?
I'm still gonna play that, so don't spoil it. So, but yes, I've heard.
So, so the thing is, like, there was just a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm no longer there's not much discovery happening anymore. Now there's just like rote repetition as I am like trying to figure out where the keys are to this thing. So, like, I think it's very, very cool. I think it's one of the best games of the year. Never connected with me emotionally on the level of like Arcane's other games, but that's not a surprise. Like, Dishonored is maybe my favorite franchise ever, damn near up there. And so like Deathloop's doing something different. I liked it a lot. It felt really, really good. But yeah, like the conceit is really well executed, but it is conceit that for me wore a little bit thin.
I can't talk about the reason I bounced off of it because Patrick doesn't want to get spoiled.
Well, let's
just say I got spoiled, and then I was like, I'm good.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. I mean, the one thing I'll say, having not finished it, but as much as I would have wanted another game in like Dishonored, I feel like that franchise ended really well, and I'm glad that they're taking swings in this direction as opposed to just making another Dishonored. I'm also sad that one of the, quote unquote leaks from 4chan are almost always wrong. But I did start to buy into. I really wanted the one that someone had like put around of like there being. I think it was called Neuroshock. It was going to be a sequel to Prey set on Earth, in like a pseudo open world. And I was like, I want to play that game. I do. But turned out not to be true, or at least not announced. Next up comes from Sam. The Elden Ring presents Network Test of the Year, or where would the Elden Ring Network Test rank in my top 10?
Shit.
Kato.
Fuck.
If If you make a list, would you include it? And if you would include it, where would you rank it?
I feel like it's too short a slice for me to actually. I mean, I might put that shit on my list. I don't know. It's so fucking cool.
See, I couldn't. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the network test.
Yeah.
I enjoyed getting a chance to like play the game and kind of wrap my head around it. I was not awed by it because I think it's still impossible to know what is this thing? Like, what is the whole of this thing? And so, yes, did it give me a cool glimpse to increase what I think Elden Ring could be? Yeah. The 6 to 7 hours that I played, I was like, yeah, another one of these games. Like, good, like, could go in some incredible directions, but just not enough for me to like look at it as more than that. It's more like, yes, it confirms to me, I think this game could be incredible.
Yeah.
But I don't like, if I was to just take that, yes, if I was to just take that slice out, I don't know that anything that I experienced, like just because I got to be on a horse and explore a bigger space, like didn't necessarily.
But the horse double jumped, Patrick.
The horse did double jump. The horse did
I feel like,
but a lot of that stuff wasn't present in that slide, right? Like,
I feel like it
there's
depends.
gestures at like you're going to be doing a ton of this exploring with this horse that is only possible with the horse, and there are sections of that, and obviously I probably didn't get to all of them, but I don't know. I still feel like it's gesturing at the bigger thing,
yeah, and
that's exciting, but I couldn't put it on my list even if I was allowing for it.
I feel like, I don't know, if it was just like, here's this weird game that someone made and it's just this slice, I think it could make 10, you know?
Yeah,
as a moment of like how excited I am for what it points towards for the full game, top 5 easily. But that is, of course, me filling in a lot of the spaces of like, oh, and this is how they'll expand it once those invisible fog walls that were around the slice fall away, right? Like, I am extraordinarily excited for that game.
I know.
February
we
can't
come back from that break. I know.
God.
We come back from that break. It's not gonna be far off before I'm signing NDAs, and that is both like exciting and deeply troubling for how much time I'm gonna be spending in that game, most likely. This comes in from Snub. Best sleepy time game.
Okay, I read this on the list and I was like, are they saying this is a snub? Like we're snubbing something by call it sleepy time because it puts us to sleep? I was very confused for a second.
My interpretation of this was like the kind of game that you put on, end of the night. You should probably go to sleep. You're a little tired. You're not fully paying attention, but like you're still engaged. The one that came to mind for me on this was Sable, actually. Like Sable. A game I really liked, one of my favorite games of the year, but not one that required my full attention. It was beautiful. It was exploratory. It has missions and objectives, but they're really just kind of like vague guideposts to like get you going in a direction. I mean, it'll tell you stuff about the story and the world and stuff, but that's like so low on the reason the game exists. And I found myself like frequently taken by like that 11 to 11:45 time slot where I should probably go to sleep, but I'm going to play a game and I need like the certain kind of game that like isn't going to ask too much of me. And Sable like filled that slot like really well. It's just like, this is nice. Like I'm just enjoying this. And then, I'd climb a mountain and see some awe-inspiring landscape as like my eyes blur and I'm like, that's nice. That's very awe-inspiring. That's nice.
Mine is a little odd, but it's Genshin Impact. Which it's mostly just like, I don't know.
Playing that on your phone?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's on my my I'm playing that mostly on the phone. Before I go to bed, I log in, do some daily things or whatever like small quest I can fit in before I like actually sit, like lay all the way down and fall asleep. And I think most of that comes from it being on the phone and being something that is like has a reason to log in daily, I did fall off of that eventually though, like halfway through the year, and it got replaced by Pokemon Unite because there's no better way to tire yourself out than a 10-minute MOBA game where you're getting angry at all the other people in this solo ranked queue and like, why are you stealing my farm? God damn it. You ever get so mad at a teammate that you want to go to sleep? There you go.
Yeah,
Pokemon Unite.
I work with Rob Zachney.
Oh, damn.
My sleepy time game, my sleepy time series has been the Judgment series.
Sure.
And that's proven to be a really good, like, it's such a low impact game in terms of what it is asking you to do. Like, I am now at a place in my life where I need a runway in the morning to get the day going. And I need an off ramp in the evening to have a good, like, reliable, like, night's sleep. And so increasingly my day, like, I used to be just someone who liked rituals because they just made me feel good and everything. Now I'm like, oh shit, man, I need to have some good habits or I'm fucked. And one of those is like, there's just a lot of games that I have to stay away from late in the evening, much like I stay away from coffee at increasingly early hours in the day. And for me, like, Judgment is interesting because, like, yeah, it's a bit of an action game, but, like, you can just press them buttons. You'll be fine. Like, Talk's going to win those fights. I could play it on hard difficulty, but, you know, fuck that. It's like, the fights are silly. So you just do the beat 'em up stuff. And then for the most part, you're, like, watching a pretty good, like, cable or, like, network crime drama. And that's good late night vibes.
It's a good choice.
2020, bid farewell to Mentalist. 2021, hello, Judgment.
You know, I'm eagerly awaiting your review, Rob. James writes in, best 2021 game you will still be playing in 2022. I wrote in my notes that I thought this would be where I put World Flipper.
Oh no.
And instead, no, because I thought that game was bad, and a tragedy. But you know that happens to us all. It's weird for me because I don't play a lot. I like so many of my games are like kind of one and done. I don't play a lot of like daily games. Like my guess is I will like start Halo Infinite over the break and then finish that in January sometime. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of those like return to game. I'm like the anti-Kato, in which like I'm largely playing like directed like narrative or at least like finishable experiences. So I don't know. Like Kato, which ones like is Pokemon gonna survive into?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It's surprising because most of the people I know that got into that game are no longer into that game, and you're like the exception there of the people I know that were very into that game when it first came out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just fucking laser targeted, you know? Like, I loved MOBAs and like lost the time in my life for them, and I love Pokemon. I love Pokemon. Like, it was too perfectly made for like, a form that I enjoy, that is easy to play in a short bursts, but still hits those like they did it. They condensed the MOBA to a 10-minute match, and like it still feels, you still run the whole arc of like needing to get ready, deciding what build you're gonna go against the other team, you know, getting into team fights, and it feels fucking good. Like, it's fucked up how perfectly like laser targeted that was, but I am absolutely still on that train and will continue to be on that train. They're about to drop fucking Dragonite, who's one of the best. I fucking love him. I'm very excited. Like, they just keep adding my favorite Pokemon, even though they had my favorite from the beginning, honestly. Gengar for life. Shout outs. I would absolutely easily be playing that game for the length of its time, even if I get mad at everyone for not knowing how to play the game in ranked queue.
I feel like that's part of the attraction for you, Kato, and you should just admit it.
Wow. Koda,
no, look, if I had a stack
hobby grade MOBA gamer all along.
God, if I had a stack of 5 people though, I wouldn't need to get mad. I have like
If I've
fluctuating
heard anything
group.
from regular Dota groups, it's that they're just like a big family, and it's chill vibes all the time.
Well, that's the thing. You have to be friends first, and then convince them to play Dota. So then you find the boundaries of that friendship very quickly.
Kato status update. It's my friends that are the problem, not me.
Hey y'all, do you want to play some? Do you want to play some MOBAs?
Not with you.
Hey, I can be helpful.
He says as he screams at me in the DMs.
So, already alluded to it. I think I'm going to be playing Hell Let Loose for a while, but I'm also pretty confident that I'm going to be playing Age of Empires 4 for a bit longer. I'm concerned. I haven't seen a ton of like, even among my strategy friends, like a lot of pickup for like Age of Empires 4 multiplayer once the review cycle ended. But I like that game a lot. It's really cool. Highly recommended. And it's the nature of these things. They've got long legs, and it's really cool seeing how Relic kind of stayed within the Age of Empires 2 framework, but did maybe the best game you can make in that framework. Like it's not just we're redoing Age of Empires 2. It is a really cool take on it for 2021.
Also from James comes a game you spent way too long playing. This part is my submission. Yeah, I feel like this is just insert long sigh from Kato. Because I feel like this so when I looked at this, I was like, I had to think harder about the category because I'm not the person that plays games that you tend to put hundreds of hours into. So it's funny because this game is both on my top 10 list, and also I spent too long playing it for how bad it is. But 12 minutes is what I arrived at.
Oh no!
Here,
Patrick, what?
Like I said, my game of the year theme was games that made me feel something. And boy, when I played 12 minutes, I felt. I mean, I ran out of that game telling Austin and Rob you have to play. You have to play this game. It is possible that you could be spoiled, and I guess that would give you some semblance of what it is like. But truly, nothing is equivalent to being in the moment and experiencing the awful story twist in that game. It was one of the best experiences I had this year. Not because it was a good game, but because it was just oh fuck, are you what? And then had to talk about it with everybody I knew. So. That game also does go on too long, for what it is. So it is both a game. A top 10 gaming moment of 2021, but also a game I spent too long playing for what was there, which is not very much.
So that's I'm
noticing a different category down that might.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go a slightly different route because I'm saving the right answer for that second one, I think.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But for this one, I will just say, again, Loop Hero. Played 40 hours of that game. I don't know why. It just happened.
I don't know.
I fucking blinked. And it was
I disagree with your choice. I feel like game you spent way too long playing is... What was the game we made you quit?
You didn't make
bullied
me.
You on the Bravely Default 2, right?
Yeah. I didn't hit. Here's the thing. I only hit 10 hours in that game.
All right. Okay. All right.
It was maybe 10 hours was a bit much even, but that's what I was saving for.
But we cut you off.
The next award.
Gotcha.
But because I quote unquote beat it and then went back for more is the thing. You don't need 40 hours to beat Loop Hero. This is what I'm saying is it just the mechanics itself started hitting a part of my brain that was yes, more circles. Yes, make it
and it
go.
And it does it itself? Ooh.
Oh, and then I can if I do this just right, I don't even have to look at it for like 15 minutes at a time, and I can do something else and then look back at it and be like, yes, it's still going. Yes, I love this.
That's funny.
It's just, being able to turn that game that everyone thought was an idler, turned out not to actually be an idler, back into an idler was really fun, but I did not need to put 40 hours into Loop Hero this year.
Rob, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I'm leafing
flipping
through my
pages.
journal.
Yes.
And I just should note here that last winter was the winter of Slay the Spire. And so just in terms of, especially on weekend hours in this year, I was like, dog, you need to be playing stuff that is more now. And instead I was like, just one more run. Just one more little run. I can have just a tiny, you know what? It probably won't even take that long. It's just one run, Michael. How long could it take? And so that is, like a game that was so perfectly engineered to just keep me being like, you know what? What I did there was I didn't have a good enough deck. I think I learned a lot from that run. I'm going to go back, and I got these new cards now in the mix. It's going to be totally different next time. And so Slay the Spire, just coming out of left field to hijack my mornings throughout the early part of this year.
This next category comes in from Fane.
Slay the Spire.
The category is just deck builders, deck builders, deck builders, deck builders, deck builders. Guess we know Rob's answer. Kato, what's your answer?
I mean, is there any other answer other than Inscription? Like what?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
it's not the deck buildingest.
True.
It isn't. It isn't, right? Like you can make it. You can make it in a way into a more deck buildingest than you need to. Honestly,
someone on this call may have participated in such a version of that game, as opposed to what the game guides you to, of like, cool, like you kind of found the cheat, like, all right, now you can narratively progress and you're good to go. Or you can gotta catch them all, and really go for it. No comment. Okay. Game that generated the most discourse, submitted by Brian.
You should read the next category too, because my answer is the same for both.
Okay. Most respected swing and a miss, which both these categories came in from Brian. I tried to apply some science to this by going to Reddit and just seeing like what were the top upvoted posts of like 2021.
Yeah.
And boy, I just like forgot about Cyberpunk 2077 or 2077, which is like a game that both generated,
right?
Correct,
but it was too late for the last. Yeah, that's
right. First, that
is a definitive, like early December of 2020. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, and and the reason, and I wrote in my notes here, is like game that generated the most discourse while also inspiring absolutely no discourse whatsoever. It was like a game that all the conversation was over the glitches and the problems with it, the crunch, but almost nothing was actually about, so is this game any good? Like what's in here? Like what's under the hood? Like so much time was spent re-examining The Witcher 3, and like I wrote like giant features about like individual quest lines in that game. And it just seemed like that critical reevaluation is starting to happen now a bit with that game. Like I've just seen people I know like talking about that game on Twitter, like a little bit of this that is happening as the game is stitched together and like sort of is what it is, for better and worse. But I thought it was an interesting game where like so many words were spilled on it, and so few of them had to do with what the game was actually doing. So what was your answer for both of these, Rob?
Yeah, for my answer for both was gonna be 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I want to be clear here. The reason I ended up really disliking 12 minutes is that it makes a narrative decision I don't respect at all. I think that decision was dog shit.
Right.
However, the reason I was so excited for this game, and I think for a good portion of it, I was still kind of on board with it, was like, it is a, what's the way to put it? I think it is trying to be a one set play in video game form. One set, one act, basically, play through like the mechanics of a point and click adventure with a clock always running. I think that's not necessarily a groundbreaking idea. There have been games experimenting in this space for a long time in adventure games, but like just in terms of boiling it down to this like self-contained little story, I thought it was a really interesting attempt. And I think until you start to get the sinking feeling of what the game is actually doing, you're like, for me, I was like, okay, I don't think this is working that well. I think it's ultimately falling into a lot of like boring experimental point and click adventure tropes as they're just trying to figure out like what will change the states in the system. But for all that, I really did like a lot of what it was attempting until the story it was actually telling came into view. And it was like, okay, so it wasn't enough to be this like sort of tight little narrative experience. You also needed to have a big dog shit twist at the end. And that's where that's where sort of respect goes out the window. But I think short of that point, you know, I would enjoy more games like 12 minutes that just don't make the big narrative bets that 12 minutes does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I like the moment that I realized playing that game that you early on you have the feeling, cool, I solved it. Like, we're going to move on to the next area. And like, that's going to be the structure of this game. Like, I get it. Like, we're going to do these little vignettes. I solve a little puzzle and then we move on to the next one. And it actually was delightful when you realize, oh shit, like the whole game is this room. And actually the different scenes are just the kitchen or like the bathroom and like the bedroom. And then this kind of like family, like living room space, like, oh, that's it. Those are the levels. And that was cool until, you know, it wasn't anymore. But I don't know that like 12 minutes both affirms that the idea there is really sound. It's just that its execution and narrative was all over the place. But yeah. I would love to see someone else, even that same developer in theory, like take a swing again at that exact concept because it was so much fun until it wasn't. But I don't think it necessarily undermines the idea that you could take that all the way through and land. Even that game itself, if it, as much as the adventure gaming stuff becomes a problem, had the story not gone where it was, I probably still would have landed much better on it. For all the repetition and kind of like bullshit problem solving you have to do towards the end. I would have been like, oh, okay, but like they took such a big design swing that like, okay, who cares if the narrative's a little bit messy? But it was just the messiest version possible. Kind of, and there's another most respected swing and a miss that comes to mind.
Yeah, and I think this one's that because I can respect like actually a lot of it is Eastward. So much about that game was really neat. I love the art style. I think the narrative hook was good, but I just couldn't get around what ended up being kind of like boring and samey combat in between those narrative bits that just kind of went a little too long. So like I couldn't push through. But like I feel like I don't know, if they just tweaked that to make it a little bit more interesting, I would have been there for the whole thing. But like couldn't make it. But I really, really do think like everything else about the production of that game is like awesome. Like it has amazing music, amazing visuals, and like a really interesting premise that the combat just kind of like killed for me. So that's, yeah. I hope that whatever they make next can hook me better, but yeah.
For me, it was Game Builder Garage, the Nintendo sort of like game builder tool,
right.
In which they went through
that
extraordinary lengths to find a way to make like the idea of like scripting and like building game rules understandable to the average person. Like doing that UI work is remarkable. I don't know if this is as successful as like a Mario Maker, but it's in the ballpark. And then they paired it with just the worst way to share or experience any of that stuff. like it's I forget there's no shop, like there's no marketplace to see people's things. You had to download individual codes. It was a total nightmare to experience. This frankly should be something that was a free to play download where you could experience all of the things people are making, and then you pay for the tools if you want to be part of the builder community. But Nintendo has shown over and over again that they are incapable of like stitching a lot of their really great ideas with the good parts of the internet, the non-NFT parts of the internet. And like that was no more underscored than in Game Builder Garage, which is like something I was so excited for to see like what people would do with it. And people did a couple of cool things, and then I have no idea what that community is even up to anymore because accessing it is such a pain in the ass. And that sucks. So yeah, I respected it, but like just a huge whiff in the part that was really important, which is getting people to see the things that people are making. This comes in from Rohan. Best music podcast to listen to while grinding in Shin Megami Tensei or any other amazing self-flagellation RPG. I was looking at my podcast for 2021. I did such a huge purge and like reshuffling of the deck in 2020 that I didn't do a lot of changing of what I listened to in 2021, except one of the ones I added was on recommendation from a number of folks was A-Lab, All Lawyers Are Bad. A very infrequent podcast in which there's like one every 2 months or so. All of them are gold, in which it's a bunch of lawyers shit talking like the legal system and explaining like it's like it feels like you're sitting down with a bunch of leftist lawyers who are drunk and explaining to like, well, here's how this shit actually works, and talking in like plain language and explaining legalese. It fucking rules. I wish they did it way more frequently than they do, but it does mean that every time I get the notification, it's like such a delight. And so,
well, they're kind of known for kind of knowing what the fuck they're talking about, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Which probably explains
absolutely.
why their posting frequency is not that of other leftist podcasts.
Yeah. Yes, they're not speaking off the cuff. It sounds like they do actual research, and so that is sometimes one that I will stack up. And like there's one of the ones where I listened to like 2 episodes, like catching up on because I just got into it, and there's like a huge backlog for me to work through. I would do that like while playing Sable, where it's like I'm climbing this mountain while also understanding how the American government fucked over like Muslims after 9/11. So like a weird pairing, but became the one that like I enjoyed. Like I had like a little intellectual tease while I was playing a game that didn't require like my full brain attention.
God, I got into so many good podcasts this year. Film Spotting fucking rules. Don't know why I was out to lunch on that one for so long.
Wait, is film? That's not the one with the guy from Ted Lasso, is it?
No. This
okay.
is so it's like the Next Picture Show and Film Spotting, I think, are like sibling podcasts. There's some overlap in the casts, but it's a lot of remember The Dissolve? It's a lot of folks like crossing over from there, sort of over Film Spotting. It's really good. The only problem is I don't keep current enough on films to like listen to a lot of their latest stuff. So I end up trawling through their back issues. That's one I got super into while just like doing like low impact stuff. I also, I'd put off listening to it for years. Mike Duncan's History of Rome, and I never need to hear stories of Rome up through the Octavian, like early Principate. I don't need to hear that shit ever again. However, listening to like the History of Rome from the sort of the last years of Nero on for the long decline, as it were, was terrific. That podcast is a lot of fun. Mike Duncan's a great storyteller. And the last thing I'll shout out, best interview podcast that I think I listen to on the regular at all. And Patrick's were sort of discussing things we want to like might do next year or like want to model. Genuinely, the Beyond the Grid podcast that Formula One puts out is one of the best one-on-one conversation podcasts you will hear. Part of it is they've got a longtime F1 journalist, Tom Clarkson, just talking to drivers and figures connected to Formula One from across the years. And a lot of these guys now are far enough away from the racing years from the sport where they can start like actually saying stuff that you will never hear current, like people who currently have skin in the game ever talk frankly about. But the other part of it is just like, they are conversations. It is not just the familiar questions being asked. There's enough rapport built up that like you are hearing people, for the most part, give what are clearly very genuine, thoughtful answers, and not the PR boilerplate you get so used to in a lot of like sports conversation. So that was one consistently this year where like every other episode I'm like, damn, that was just such an exciting and like fascinating look from how the sport looks from behind this particular curtain.
Kato, anything come to mind?
I don't do this. So not to the, like I literally cannot. Like I played Sable. I listened to the soundtrack in Sable. It was very calming. Like I don't know. It like bothers me to do this on most games. Destiny is one where like I've played that game long enough that certain activities I can do this with, but I don't usually go for podcasts because the podcasts I like to listen to require more of my brain space than doing something else at the same time would allow. So usually what I do is I put on a Let's Play or something that I can kind of like, somebody's playing a different game and I'm kind of like half following along, and that's fine. But if we're just going to talk about podcasts that I got into this year, I want to give, I would love to give a shout out to Homestuck Made This World, friend of the site, Cameron Kunzelman, and oh God, why Michael Lutz? Yeah, Jesus Christ.
The other guys?
The other guy.
Should have just left it there.
Michael Lutz is the one like driving this podcast.
Well, the problem is
Cam.
Cut that. Cut Michael loose. Get Warren is Dead on the podcast, please. It's the problem when your handle is a first name that is deeply credible.
Right. I almost said, yeah, War is Dead. But I've been really enjoying them going through the, rereading Homestuck, and what I really appreciate is Michael's kind of deep dive into the historical context through forum posts and, his own recollections, obviously, of how that all hit and the different things that were happening around the edges of it. Because truly one of the like wild things about reading that back when it was coming out was the online interactions around it and the fandom and being on the edges of that. And taking the look of that now and realizing how much of this kind of permeated other parts of fandom has been fascinating. I'm not even doing the read along because their summaries are really pretty good, but like the interesting part of the podcast is always them kind of talking about these larger contexts and the way that certain forms of online interaction were like, oh wow, this was maybe one of the first times this happened was around the Homestuck fandom and things like that. So yeah, that podcast is great. And even if you've never or don't think you're interested in Homestuck, you might be interested in them talking about it, honestly.
All right, we're not gonna have time for all the other ones here, so I'm gonna skip around and grab a grab bag as we head towards the end of this. But this is one of my favorite submissions from Nick. The Kato Award. The Kato Award is given to a game that does nothing to earn the patience or commitment of the player, but the player, Kato, soldiers on regardless. My answer for this was World Flipper, because I thought that game was dog shit, and I still played like 40 hours of it over the span of a month because I was both trying to convince myself and also because not the gotcha part, like that stuff, gambling, like I'm fortunate that my psychology does not respond to things like that. I can control my interactions with those kinds of designs, but the actual pinball stuff was like felt good and looked good, and I was enjoying that. And I just kept waiting for like the shoe to drop, where it's like, all right, like this part's cool. Where's the rest? And it never appeared. And I got my robot. And like that was, I think when I got the robot, it was like that was it. Like that was when the fever broke. It was like, cool. I've done the thing that I wanted, which is to get my robot friend, even though he's not represented in the game or cool to play as, at all because the game does a poor job of that part. So that was my version of this, was like a game I spent. It's, I guess, similar to the, played too much of, but like, I think this one is explicitly you recognizing in your heart, I shouldn't have been playing this game. Like, I should have bounced so much earlier. And it's not even like empty calories. Like, it's just bad. Like, I was just trying to convince myself to keep going, and eventually, fortunately, got off.
I mean, mine is probably the reason this exists, and this is and was a theme this year, was fucking early on Bravely Default 2, the game that I shouldn't have played as much as I think I only ended up putting 15 hours in there, but I rarely come away from something being like, I fully regret that experience. As much as I fully regret giving it that much time. That game was not good. The things that I found good in it were better in Bravely Default 1. Like, I should have just replayed Bravely Default 1 with that time. I would have had a better fucking time. So that's where my Kato award goes to. Bravely Default 2.
So I am giving my golden focus right to Battlefield 2042.
Finally coming down.
Yeah, which is just like,
you really held out for a minute there. I thought there was going to be a turn, like, here's where it's finally good.
Just viscerally, I was like, oh, this seems totally fucked up. And I was like, it can't be that fucked up. Like, there's got to be a good Battlefield under there. Let's just go in there and find it.
And that was a lot of like the conversations Rob would have with me, like pre-pod and stuff like that, while he was going through that process of being like, because you are trying to like, did I have a bad review process? Like, am I not playing the right modes? Like, should I wait till it's live? Like, maybe they'll add voice chat to this game. Not that, you know what I mean? Like, you're grasping onto things when you have like that kind of reaction to a game.
Especially because I think sometimes I am used now to, because so many of the games I play end up just existing just because of like what we are allowed to prioritize. A lot of things end up in what you would call, like in the old magazine days, like 7 or 8 games, right? Where it's like, you won't have a strong initial reaction probably, and you probably won't have a strong exit reaction. So like, it takes time to dial in, like, where do I think this actually falls? Like, how do I actually feel about this thing? Sometimes those games can end up really surprising you. You put in the time and you're like, wait, there's a lot more here. Other times you're like, wow, this thing is sort of now starting to fall apart, in my hands. I've hit a point where, like, when you have an instant, like, nope reaction, you almost can't trust it, because you're like, but you didn't do anything. Like, you haven't put any time into it. So now you have to be like, okay, set aside the nope and try to figure out, like, okay, but what's redeeming here? What's redemptive? Yeah. And I think as a critic, that's always led me to sort of wishy-washiness, because, like, by the end, as a freelancer of like putting a lot of time into these games, you would end up being like, okay, I can see what they're going for here, and I can see here are the things that work. And here also is why I'm really confident that ultimately this does not work, despite like what they're trying to do. But it is so rare that like you just have an instantaneous, like, nothing here is working. Like, this is just misfiring in every direction. And now I need to figure out, why is it misfiring? Because now I feel like I haven't done my job if I'm not like, okay, but now I need to understand why I'm running Screaming from the Room. And I really want to run Screaming from the Room. I wonder if some of like that kind of immediate reaction is just the hypothetical, but like we don't see games early as much as we used to, especially in COVID. There are just less pre-release access to things, or less preview events. There are less moments where a developer guides you through, here is the vision of our game, and we're going to talk to you about it while you play it. And, you try to shut that stuff out, but like that becomes part of how you think about the game. And I wonder if a little bit of like your reaction is like seeing very little of this game being shoved in front of it, and then having just a visceral, immediate reaction to it that you then have to unpack, maybe partially because you have less of a sense of like, what were they going for here? Like, why did this misfire? Whereas like sometimes when you play a game, it's like, well, the developer told me they were trying to do this, and like there was very little evidence that they were able to pull that off when I'm playing it. So because you get some of that structure from the pitch, and when you just are presented with the thing,
you end up having a faster, more immediate emotional reaction as a result. That's just a theory, but I wonder if a part of that plays into it. All right, because we did a Kato award, I have to do the other one. A lot of people submitted a variation on this award. Alex wins as the one that I picked. The Rob Zacny game from 5+ years ago that I got into recently again award. Rob, I feel, I should have given it to Kato when it was his award first. What are you giving this award to?
Oh man. There's so many good options here. Maybe the actual answer is what we talked about last week, which was Forza Motorsport 7. Just randomly falling back into that. I think the fact I ended up falling back into Company of Heroes again this year, admittedly connected to a sequel. Yes, that was part of it. But also, like, dude, I replayed Company of Heroes 2 Ardan's Assault, and there was no good reason to do that. That didn't even connect to Company of Heroes 3. I was just like, you know what was a good campaign? Company of Heroes 2 Ardan's Assault. I'm just going to play that. And I'm like, all these other games can gather dust. Just me and Ardan's Assault going to be fighting World War II in the snow. It's going to be great. And it was.
Kato, any game that falls into this bucket for you?
I mean, yes and no, because the answer is Final Fantasy 14, but that game also the reason is
it can't count.
Well, yeah, but I'm not playing the new stuff. I'm literally playing the stuff from over 5 years ago. Like, I am literally in that section of the game. So does it? Maybe it counts.
Maybe it counts.
Because I can't say Destiny, because even though Destiny did come out that long ago, I am caught up. I am playing the new stuff. But like, I got back into Final Fantasy around.
You might not be able to play the old stuff because
actually, that stuff isn't in the game anymore. So I don't really have an option there. But like, yeah,
the Red War.
There was like, hype around Endwalker, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I should get back in there and see how far I can get. Did not make it to Endwalker. Barely made it into the last thing, but like, I feel like I reached some sort of hump where like now I'm like, oh, I'm just enjoying this. Like, this is fine. Like, it's not amazing or anything, but I'm gonna keep at it. I'll plug away and I'll eventually finish Final Fantasy 14 at some point in my life. But yeah, I guess that one counts because I'm playing the 5-year-old version parts of it.
Because I'm the anti-Zacny, I have nothing to contribute to this award. I only play the newer stuff. I mean, the closest I have is like, I have this, I put in my notes like a whole rant about like my 5-year-old has increasingly been curious about video games. So I've been jumping between a lot of different ones to try and figure out something that she can grapple onto, but we'll save that for a slower January. That's a rant for another day. Just let me turn off death in games, please God. Please. Let's see, as we wind down here, game that might have cracked your list if you had 20+ hours to devote to playing it. This came in from Nick. My answer here was Returnal. I am so sure that would have been one of my favorite games of the year had I the way that game handled its save stuff where you could not pause a run just meant that it just interrupted the flow of how I experience things. Like, it's like, hey, even on this PlayStation, like if I need to play another game for work, I can't do that. Because if I put the Returnal to sleep, I guess you can't do, what I mean? Like, it didn't fit into my life, but it was the kind of game where had I been able to put in the proper hours, I loved how it played so much that I know that it would have really worked for me. I know that they've since changed the game and they've been teasing like a big expansion. So I'm actually, that might be a 2021 game that becomes like a much liked 2022 game, but it's one that I know for sure I would have loved if I'd been given the chance to put the hours into it.
Mine is really recent because I just started it, but I finally got around to Unsighted, and I really wish I had hit that a lot earlier than I had because I'm not that far into it, but already I'm like, oh shit, like
it's really good.
If I had time to get through that, that's definitely something that it would make my lists. It's gonna be my like
I want to clean that up.
Yeah, 2021 game that is the best 2020 game I played in 2022 sort of situation. I'm sorry.
Did you turn off?
No, I left that shit on.
You left that on? Okay.
I think I'm gonna love it for the reason, like, yeah, that's part of why I'm like, oh shit, this is hitting. I heard about the timers and stuff, and kind of like in an abstracted sense was like, oh, that's interesting, but something about hitting that in the game, like seeing the people that it's attached to and the way it's kind of presented hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I'm like, oh, this is Kata food.
For people that don't know,
emotional torture.
In Unsighted, like every major character that you encounter where you can have like dialogue with, has
not
essentially
even major. Minor characters,
like yeah,
random NPCs that are just walking around and have one line of dialogue have that timer on them.
Have a timer associated with them in which that is when they will run out of the mystical robot consciousness juice that stops them from going like robot feral. I've forgotten all the proper nouns they use to describe that stuff in that game because I played half of it a couple of months back.
Anima is the stone.
Sure, there you go. Anime?
Unsighted it's the name of the game. They go unsighted. They become unsighted.
Right, correct. That's when they kind of go feral, and that becomes like the enemies you fight. And there's a rare resource in the game that you can use to benefit yourself, or you can then use that to keep certain characters alive for longer as you try and get through the game itself, because that clock is going in real time as you're exploring, solving puzzles, and doing yada yada. And then there's an option in the menu to just flip that off, which based on Moises' review, I did that immediately. I was like, that didn't seem like the kind of tension that I wanted from that game. So I'll be curious if you finish that, Kato, where you end up on that by the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm 100% all the way in on that tension being. It feels critical. Like I'm glad they added that toggle just because other people will have like that'll be too much tension. But it feels like what this game is about in a way that you can't separate it from the narrative in a way. So like I don't know. I'm really excited and I wish I had gotten onto it earlier.
Rob, is there any game that you think would have landed higher if you'd actually had time to put into it?
So many. Yeah, this is one of these things. Like, I think I know I'm going to tuck into over winter break. Guardians. Like, I saw enough where I was like, if the rest of the game is half as good as these first 3 hours, it's going to be a special fucking game.
I think also that is a perfect holiday game.
And yes, that's the thing. I need to be like all hands on deck where I'm playing that. Like, you have a couple hours each day to like put into it and like spend time with these characters. Because the thing I couldn't handle was like those first 3 hours, it was like a pilot of a TV show or maybe almost a movie in itself in some ways, even though it's actually like the first act of it, the setup for a movie. But yeah, like I just playing through that, I was like, I do not want this to be a thing I am wedging into like 45 minutes before bed or an hour before work. Like I want to just be able to hang with this game.
All right, the last one we'll do just is the best game. This came from Daniel. Best game Waypoint streamed this year. I think the audience would probably pick Inscription. Based on the way those streams went. I thought of this from my perspective, which was I voted for Back for Blood because I don't even think the game is very good, but I've had so much fun playing it.
Yeah. I
don't think it's a bad game, but I don't like it is entirely supported by like the banter and the fun and the like where's the chain gun meme for Natalie as opposed to
let me test something with these birds.
Yeah,
so many good moments.
Sure, that stuff is that is those moments. And that reaction I'm having is because of what's in the game, but like it's just sort of, I don't know, the card stuff is like the enemy design is like it's just a bunch of blah to me. but I've had a blast playing it, and I definitely would not. It's not a game that would. I know they're adding like a way to like better progress to the single player, but like, come on, like just don't put yourself through that. Like, that's not what this game is.
Gosh, so the streams, I like genuinely, I have fucking loved the streams this year. I think Inscription is a tough bar to beat. But in some ways it's also an unfair comparison because like the three of us, Natalie, myself, and Kato, like made space for us to just like feast on that. Maybe gorge is the correct like thing to say there. I'm not sure. I think we went beyond feasting a couple times and just into wallowing, rooting.
I love this filth. I love this card, filth.
Yep. So I think like that's tough to beat. I really also did enjoy playing Resident Evil. That was I do not think I would have gotten nearly as much. I think the frustrations of that experience, playing alone, would have turned me. They have turned me away from the game earlier, but like having Patrick sort of providing context and advice and like instruction was a lot of fun. Also, the parts where I got hopelessly stuck, apparently needlessly, were also a lot of fun. So I think that probably is after Inscription my favorite stream.
I feel like Inscription not putting Inscription to the side because it happened to also be GOTY, so that's like not that's helping it a lot.
Unfair.
But the next two that were kind of tied was going to be RE1, which you brought up, and I actually really enjoyed when you and Austin were playing Wildermyth. Like the Wildermyth streams were pretty fucking solid because that was just like, you know, the way that game like hits its comedic beats with the little comics is so fucking good, and like y'all doing the voices for the different characters, just like it was that classic Tactical Tuesdays on your bullshit stuff that I really enjoyed this year. So that would be my shout out for the next one in the list that we haven't talked about yet.
My runner up was the Kirby's Dream Course, which just two people who yeah, exactly. Is that yes? That yes. Two people who proclaim to know what they're doing. One person who really proclaimed to know what they're doing, and just complete abject chaos.
That game.
Yes, Kat and I talked about doing a run on golf games. Like, I do want to do that in 2021.
We should.
Like, I didn't realize that the NES golf game is just in like the Switch, like online.
Oh shit!
Stuff. So. I want to go play like what were those golf games? Was it Access? Like the PC golf games from like the 90s.
Lynx?
Oh my god, Lynx.
Like I want to go back.
Dude,
and play.
if you go back to play Lynx, I will play Lynx with you. Shit.
Okay, I don't know how we do that. I got to do some research, but
gotta figure out.
If people want to write in, like basically, I'd like us to go back to just a wide swath of weird golf games, like
Lynx and Build
and. Yeah, and especially older ones that were like the mechanics will frustrate us. Like specifically, like that's what Dream Course was so fun.
God, but the thing about Dream Course is that it's like 99% of the time you're like sure, and that 1% fuck up.
It goes so wrong.
That margin like really fucks you up hard.
Yes,
It's beautiful.
I'll just say this about golf games real quick too. I think they also ended up in this weird place of it's sort of like where MLB is too, where it's like, which interface do you like using for this basic function? And that doesn't exist because there's a best one. That exists because over the years, different people playing different games, or even the same franchise with different controls, they've since tried to revamp to change the gameplay. They just end up like having to completely like, okay, we're done with the meter. Now you use the stick or the mouse to like actually make a motion. And nobody can ever agree on that shit. So like games just end up having more and more, they have to support more and more control options. And I think golf ended up in the same place where it was like EA trying to be like, you know, it'd be really good is if you could use your controller like a golf club. And I'm like, that's not good at all, but go for it.
All right, well I think that's gonna do it. I'm sorry, there were other ones I had on here, but we went long, so you know, that's the nature of things. Who could have guessed that when we did an opening segment about the Game of the Year stuff that I thought would be 15 minutes went 40, and then that sanded off the.
Oh
other
no!
categories.
I would like to note here. I congratulated Patrick. As a Patrick, you noted like you're better running the show than I am. You like run that clock. You saw we needed to take a break. You were on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same thing happened to you that happens to me. Which
Yeah.
like we have structural problems with how we handle this show, and I think it's that we're all interested in what each other has to say, and nobody has the heart to be like, we need to wrap it up. We need to move on from this point.
But do we?
Rob, no one
We have
cares
to
about your observation about the golf genre.
We do. We have another podcast to record. I don't know if we're recording it at the time that we said, but if that is true, it would be extremely soon.
Yeah,
that's
no.
probably not happening.
Yeah,
We can
fuck
push it. There was wiggle.
Yeah.
There was wiggle.
No, I don't think we can push it. Natalie did nothing wrong here.
No,
Yeah.
I checked in. We're good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the. I'll record this separately. Kato, edit this out, but like I'll just record the
Way
promo
last minute.
that we need to do. I guess I can put it in here, but
Fuck.
Yeah,
I'll just.
I mean, that's what we've been doing. Just
and then but then you also need to put it in.
I'll put it at the
like,
front,
in
yes.
the break,
Yeah.
or in the front or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Whereas, hey everyone, we're running a sale on subscriptions to Waypoint Plus, so you can get 25% off an annual subscription through the end of the year with the coupon code WAYLASTMINUTE. If you're looking for a last minute gift, give the gift of Waypoint. You can choose a date for your subscription to be delivered to the recipient so as not to ruin the surprise. Ooh. Or you can buy one for yourself. Visit vice.com/waypoint to order. And then also we do the outro. Hey, if you made it to the end of this podcast, you get to see the mess. So that is going to do it for us. That's a wrap for today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you want more for Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint, Facebook and YouTube, Waypoint Vice. You can follow me at Patrick Klepek. Kato, where can people follow you?
At @A_Kato_appears.
Rob.
This won't even be topical anymore, but in my heart, I'm still at Leshy's place.
Oh, boy. Did we ever leave?
Good
Did
question.
we ever leave? You can go check out what we published over at waypoint.vice.com. When we publish things for Waypoint Plus listeners. Let's see what's going on. Unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna record that Arcane spoiler cast, and that's gonna fall through the cracks. That'll still happen. We'll do that, but I don't think it's gonna happen for in time
Sometime
for
in
people to listen to. Yeah, sometime in January. We'll follow up on that. But that's going to do it. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. You can learn more at waypoint.zone/Bowen. I don't know if this is the first of the holiday pods or the second of the holiday pods. Kata will,
It's
the
the
power
first.
will be, it's the first. It's the
We're
first.
just going to go in chronological order.
All right. Well, then you can look forward to a big old mailbag with the three of us plus Natalie. These are rolling out once a week during the 2 weeks that we are kind of taking off, going into cool down mode before we come back after the new year. So however you celebrate the holidays, you can do that while fucking capitalism going on. It didn't sound, it sounded better in my head.
God damn it, we can't do this again.
In Waypoint 2022, we're horny for capitalism.
Let me actually refill my water real quick. Be right back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Man, Patrick, you actually have a sense for how long the show's been going. I admire it, and you act on that sense. You took a break, and we should take a break.
I was like, like many things, I thought that we would do that for 15 minutes. We did it for 40 minutes, and it's like, all right, we should do this so that we can have an actual lunch in between the podcast. I mean, we'll see what happens with Natalie.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that games like Mundaun are kind of one of the things that like they make me feel a little like, I don't know, itchy just about like what should we be doing as media to like celebrate that stuff. Like,
Yes.
Because we do our little blog post, we do our, hey, this is cool on the pod, and then we're done with it. And the thing is, like, I am certain that if, like, is the best thing we can do find time to stream shit like that. Because I'm sure like you or I playing that, like it would be a different type of thing, but like
playing it's a better way of selling people on it than it is writing about it. I think like you doing, I did that little interview because it was a small lift, but like that just like the only people clicking on that are folks that already played Mundaun, which just means you're writing for like just the smallest audience in
reviews don't move the fucking needle. You could like we can go out there and be like, you know what, this is the greatest horror game since I don't know, whatever, like Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Right.
You need to play it. And like that will make 5 people be like, yeah, I probably do need to play that then if Patrick Klepek over at Waypoint is saying it. But like and then because no outlet operates according to that, there's no like word of mouth never has its moment to do its thing.
Right.
Buzz doesn't build. It just dissipates immediately. I don't know. To me, it felt like this year, everyone I know who played Psychonauts 2 seems to really admire what Psychonauts 2 did, and like it was terrific.
Yep. It
also feels like Deathloop like just completely sucked the conversational air out of the room entirely.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I liked Psychonauts. I went the other way where it's like I fell off Deathloop. That's like a game I'm hoping to play over the holidays.
Yeah.
And instead all my brain power went to Psychonauts 2. But I was playing that while everyone else was playing that.
But it just seemed fucked up because like Psychonauts seemed to do really well with critics, but like conversationally it was all like Deathloop. And I was like, did that game flop? Did Psychonauts just eat shit because of this? I don't know how it translated.
It seemed like it did. My understanding is it did pretty good. I need to read this tweet to you, Rob.
Yeah.
Mitch Trubisky will be getting reps with Josh Allen Limited. McDermott won't say much else about the situation other than the team is taking it day to day.
Patrick,
go!
This is the prophecy. He's going to lead them to a late season surge. And people are going to be like, whoa. Mitch Trubisky is a really good substitute Josh Allen.
Who do they play this weekend? Oh, it lines up so well for my boy. The Panthers. They suck.
Oh, he's going to obliterate their asses.
Yes, he's going to win. Oh my God. That's
Mitch.
Woo. I would be happy for him. He did nothing wrong other than suck.
And who knows? Maybe it was not in the stars that he would have sucked.
Or maybe I think he sucks. But probably could be a useful tool that like if Josh Allen was limited for 2 games, I bet they split those games with Trubisky. Also, Splinter Cell, a remake in development at Ubisoft Toronto. And they explicitly came out and said they're not making it open world. Which is just like a funny thing that they have to do.
Sam, we need you to get into the Antifa meetings to figure out when the next BLM protests are going to shut down Mall of America. Get into these air ducts and plant listening devices all over. Yeah.
Hello.
Back?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I can bring us back.
Black Mirror?
What? Bring us back. Bring us back?
I thought I heard Black Mirror as well. Black Mirror is back.
I thought you said Black Mirror is back.
Black Mirror is back, baby, and it's better than ever.
Splinter Cell is back. Splinter Cells.
What is technology but too much?
Splinter Cell.
Splinter Cell is back. Huh.
It is. They're doing a remake of the original, I guess.
You know, I've never played a game in that series.
Which
is fucked up. It would be my shit. I'm sure of it.
Probably
be really hard to go back to that first one, but that'd be a good one.
Probably.
That would be yeah. That would be one where I'd like to watch Rob play that and never touch it myself. Like, how do I watch Rob play Stalker or Splinter Cell, but I don't have to play that game. Okay, all right, let's get to these awards. Butcher Box is also like expensive as shit. I had no way would I ever pay for it by myself.
Dude, I was like, let's see what these offers actually are. And they're like, you can build your own Butcher Box. And I was like, absolutely not. No, I am not.
Every time I mentioned that I got that box to someone, and there are one of our friends one of Jessica's friends' parents down the street, like the guy's like company got sold. Like they seem to do pretty well. And I like mentioned Butcher Box, and he's like, absolutely not. I wouldn't pay for that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Is that why are they advertising on Waypoint Radio then?
It worked out. Apparently, they've seen actual results according to this email. So
great.
That's because
food. I'm not
just
feeding
my whole family.
Yeah,
I'm just like, and Mina loves Butcher Box too. Don't you love this poodle?
Everyone loves Mina. Everyone loves Mina.
Love to cook a steak, and I split it with me and Mina. We split it. You know, she gets a half, and I get a half.
Oh, I'm so happy! I just got tons of ground beef. So much ground beef. Do you know that Butcher Box will just, whether you want it or not, send you ground beef?
What are you gonna do with that whole turkey, Rob? Or is
I still got those lobster tails.
You still have those lobster tails?
I'm like, so wait. I'm gonna prepare lobster, but just 2 lobster tails, and that's a meal? No,
that's just that's your Rob. I think what your solution there is the next time MK's out of town, Rob's eating lobster tails.
That's a good point.
Right. What MK don't know what she's missing. Okay. Just 2 lobster tails is enough for you. You could take one of the fillets. Pair that up. That's like a $45 meal at a restaurant that you've just made, well, for nothing.
Little surf and turf for one.
Yeah. We're kind of record this and send this. Like, can we put this in the podcast? I feel like it'd be a good ad. It's we're on the take, but we're so positive.
So something really troubling happened though when I was unboxing all the Butcher Box shit. Butcher Box bacon appeared. I held it in my hands, and I never saw it again. Like, by the time I was done putting stuff away, I was like, where did that bacon go? This is alarming, because the only thing in that area was my water heater, my laundry machines, the deep freeze, and then dark crevices around the other machines.
No.
And so I'm like, I've looked in the places where it could have easily fallen, and I wouldn't see it. No bacon.
No bacon.
But I'm terrified that somewhere in this house is slowly decomposing vac-sealed bacon.
Oh, God.
And I won't find it.
It's vac-sealed though, right?
Pardon?
But at some point, I guess it might be like...
It might expand enough. Yeah,
it would probably burst its seal. Yes.
Rancid
bacon.
And
then I will just have to live somewhere else. Goodbye, condo, forever.
Mina, what are you eating?
No, she would. The thing is, actually, you know what? She will alert us if it becomes an issue, because she does not like it when I start to burn my pizza when I'm reheating on the stove. Like, she will go over there and stand and stare at the skillet, and if I don't respond to that, she'll do an alert bark. I'm like, what the fuck, dog? And I'll come over and I'll be like, oh my God, the crust is starting to blacken. Like, it's a perfect timer.
Amazing.
It's just like, this is a dangerous smell. You guys should not be doing this.
I've fully moved all that to the air fryer.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Dude.
Even reheating pizza?
Oh my God, yeah. Yes.
What?
Yeah.
How do you, hold on. I guess is the air fryer like
it's like a mini stove.
Okay.
Basically. So it's like,
So it's like a toaster oven?
But like a really good one that works.
Low circulation, is that it?
Yes. Yeah, air fryer is an incredible investment.
Doesn't a fancy oven basically come with that feature built in then? If you buy one of the really fancy ovens?
Maybe I don't have one. My oven is old as shit, but
mine too. I want to die so I could buy a nice oven.
It's just like incredible the vast majority of my air fryer use is kids meals, which is like they're like chicken nuggets and things like that. I can make in 5 minutes instead of like 20 minutes in the oven, or like giving them microwaved chicken nuggets, which I know they'll eat, but just feels it's so gross when you touch them. It's so gross. And so I just, one of the holidays of the air, like the air fryer that everyone buys
went on sale, like, half price. I was like, okay, fine. My wife Katie didn't like how much space it took up in the kitchen. We don't have a ton of counter space. But then I was like, but just like make the kids meal once or twice. And like, I think it'll earn its spot. And it hasn't moved in 8 months.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. We could do free ad reads
association
that we can't release to the world.
Which should really subscribe, support us is, what is it? The little bark box. Now that is a value.
That used to be a
Bark
very very common podcast ad, but they not as much.
I think they might have just reached saturation. You know, and so the other issue is the shit's too good. Like, unless you have a dog that just habitually destroys toys, just like that's their thing, is how they play with stuff, is just to rip it apart. Their toys will last just, a year and a half.
Well, that's what happened to me with the hairy shaver. Like, I finally was just like, I'm tired of like buying cheap shit at the store. Like, I'll just get the subscription, but I don't shave enough, and so I suddenly had like 30. I just looked at like, oh, I have like 30 razors because I just don't go through them fast enough. I need to cancel the subscription, and then I'll sign up again in a year and a half when I've made it through this pile of razors.
I still haven't. I have like
this is how Patrick ends up doing like full body shaving.
15 boxes of what? Harry's razors?
Not Harry's, the other one. I was Dollar Shave Club.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, these are so cheap, I don't even want to stop. They're just like gonna stockpile them, and then I've stockpiled enough.
In case what? Oh, okay, you canceled it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did cancel it, but like I maybe canceled it further along than I should have, because it's been like a solid 2 years now that I haven't.
You have the equivalent of Rob and I's freezer chest of ground beef, but instead it's racers.
Yep.
Well, I couldn't. I don't fuck with Dollar Shave Club because I'm a Jeff and Andy stan.
What?
I don't. Okay, let's start the podcast. Rob, you are slightly blurry. I feel like you would care
Rob's,
about that.
Focus is on the couch, showing us where Mina could possibly be. The possibility of Mina.
Possibility of Mina. All right, there we look better.
Yeah. Yes.
Scientists in the Fermi lab are still working on
They're proving the possibility
Mina
of Mina
equation of the possibility of Mina.
All right.
Yeah. So I figure we will briefly do just everyone's game of the year, and we can talk about that, and then we'll just do these topics. And I feel like that'll take us through like various games people have played, but like we can go as long or as short as we want on the game of the year part.
Yeah, that makes
Which is
all
fine.
perfect sense.
Yep. And we can even use that to talk. I don't know, Rob. Like you were sort of like part of the reason you didn't want to do a top 10 was sort of an indifference or like hard to think of the year. So like we could use that space to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Oh yeah. Do we have a list? Do we have the list of stuff?
Yeah, it's in the podcast notes.
In the Vice City notes.
Yeah, or
in
the
you
group
actually
chat.
Opened that? Once?
I did for this, yes.
All right, Patrick, I'm going to flip this over to you, and you're just going to be the captain for most of these shows.
Okay.
Unless you just want to do the intro.
No, you can do the intro, and then you can throw over to me. And I mean, when we do the mailbag, I'll mark people's names so that everyone can read some different stuff.
All right. I am at time.is. 20. Kat, are we going to number these like regular Waypoint Radio episodes, or do the holiday ones like exist in an outside time zone?
Nah, I mean, we should put numbers on them.
Especially because we're not, especially in the case where we're not even like spamming daily.
Yeah, they're pods. Taking the literal slots of 2 weeks of regular pods. So,
oh no, Waypoint.gay.
Lapse
is down.
Oh, I mean, AWS is having issues.
AWS killed Waypoint.gay? Jeff Bezos doesn't want the word to get out. He's like, who's at the forefront of labor organizing? Lots of organizations. And behind them, Waypoint. right.
Did I ask you, Patrick, if you ratified the union contract?
Yeah, I think I was the first. I was probably the first person who did it. It hit my email. I clicked yes immediately. I was like,
yours went to your inbox. Mine went to spam. It's like, this isn't real.
Oh,
A
technology.
random unsolicited survey monkey poll? No.
Okay,
Well, that
This email redirects.
survey.
that explains why there were like follow-ups to see if I had ratified it. I was like, I did. I hit yes. It was like, oh, so that's recorded anonymously, and now they have to check with every single person to see if they. Oh,